Good evening. I just want to make a quick announcement. We are waiting for a fourth commissioner to show up so that we can have quorum to begin the hearing. We are in text communication at the moment. Should start shortly. Thank you.
Welcome to the City of Bakersfield Planning Commission meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. The agenda for this meeting can be downloaded at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, Vice Chair Daniel Cater.
Good evening. Good evening. It is my pleasure to call to order the February 29th, 2024 Special Planning Commission meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Bashir Tosh. Vice Chair Cater.
Here.
Commissioner Biddle. Here. Commissioner Kaur. Commissioner Coleman.
Here.
Commissioner Neal. Commissioner Strickland.
Here.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for attending tonight's Planning Commission meeting. This commission provides an opportunity for public participation in the development process throughout the city of Bakersfield. The Planning Commission considers a wide variety of projects, including subdivision maps, zone changes, general plan amendments, and much more. When the applications are received, the City Planning Division analyzes the request. Planning staff will present the facts about the project along with their recommendation to the Planning Commission, who will approve an item or make a recommendation as appropriate. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 3A, public statements.
Does anyone in the audience wish to address the commission regarding items listed on tonight's agenda? Please note, if you're here for items 6A or 6B, now is not the time to speak. You will be given an opportunity to speak at a later time. Hi.
My name is Sandra Placencia, and I am a current policy advocate with Leadership Council.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. Leadership Council works alongside communities most impacted by housing needs, right? And I'm here to comment on the most recent APR, Annual Progress Report. I believe it's 7A. Just wanted to highlight that the city of Bakersfield failed to meet their regional housing needs allocation, so the RENA, for the fifth cycle for the housing element, wanted to highlight the huge disparities between very low income permits and moderate and above moderate permits issued by the city. There were 959 low income and very low income housing permits given in the 8-year cycle, and 16,423 moderate above moderate, meaning that we are closer to building moderate or above moderate in comparison to very low income. But that is causing a huge issue, right? So we definitely encourage the city to address this in the next cycle, right? As we are moving towards the 6th one and working on it. The city should include programs and policies that will ensure that affordable housing is actually being developed and created and built within the city of Bakersfield. And we suggest that the city follow HCD guidance to fully analyze sustainability of identified sites and accommodate for low income and very low income and the extremely low income. And we also encourage the city to analyze impacts on cost, supply, housing affordability, timing, approval, and ability to achieve maximum densities. And also relook at the permit times, which is kind of a constraint to housing as well. So we just strongly urge the city to meet their 6th cycle arena for affordable housing through an inclusionary zoning ordinance, right? This will ensure that the city affirmatively furthers fair housing, which is the city's duty. And because inclusionary zoning seems to be kind of a hot topic, we would really like to sit down alongside with community members to talk about inclusionary zoning and what we envision it to look like in the city, and possibly for the city to look into an in lieu fee as well, right? That would funnel more money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and give more funding overall for affordable housing developments in case developers don't want to follow inclusionary zoning. And then the last thing I wanted to mention as well is that programs must be clear, precise, and have metrics, goals, and deadlines. We're looking at how far or how well the 5th cycle programs did. I think it was clear that the majority of them were still ongoing and in process because there was no actual metrics or deadlines included to begin with, right? So we definitely ensure that the city makes sure that the next housing element, the 6th cycle, has clear and precise deadlines to ensure that affordable housing is built throughout the city. Thank you so much. And then I brought letters that I will give to y'all.
Thank you. Please feel free to provide the clerk with letters, and they'll be distributed to commissioners. Are there any other speakers wishing to address items on tonight's tonight's agenda? Thank you. Seeing none, does anyone in the audience wish to address the commission regarding items not listed on tonight's agenda? If so, please come forward and state your name. Was there? No. Seeing no members of the audience wishing to provide public statements on non-agenda items, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 4, consent calendar items.
Please note all matters listed under the consent items do not require a public hearing and will be enacted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of said items unless staff or a commissioner requests specific items be discussed and or removed for separate action. May I get a motion to adopt consent item 4A?
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Strickland, may I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Biddle. Commissioners, please cast your votes. Did you?
Sorry. Do I need to point out that I watched the YouTube video since I was absent from that meeting?
As long as you reviewed the agenda minutes beforehand,
Oh, okay.
you can vote.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Motion passes with Chair Bashir Taj and Commissioners Kaur and Neal absent.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 5, there are no consent public hearing items.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 6, non-consent public hearing items.
Oh, now is sorry, I'm not used to being the one that drives the meeting. My apologies. Now is the time for non-consent public hearing items. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how the hearing will be conducted. Staff will first will give a report. Then those in favor of the project will be given an opportunity to speak. Those in opposition to the project will be able to speak after all of those in favor have spoken. Each side will be given a 5-minute time to provide rebuttal comments. Please note this is a 5-minute total time for all speakers, so be succinct and be respectful of others that may wish to participate in the process. Individual speakers may ask questions during their statements, but the questions will not be answered until the public hearing on that item is closed. If preferred, written comments may be provided to the clerk, who will provide copies to the commission. Please be respectful of others participating in the hearing, and please refrain from repeating the remarks of previous speakers and presenting any new comments or thoughts in a concise and clear way. Mr. Johnson, will you please provide your staff report on item 6A?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Cater. Commissioners, members of the audience, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Item 6A is a request for a conditional use permit to convert a hotel into a multifamily dwelling complex. It's located at 2700 White Lane, which is on the northeast corner of White Lane and Highway 99. And the property is zoned C2 Regional Commercial.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
On the agenda, 6A is City of Bakersfield zone change, and 6B is conditional use permit.
If it,
Not on yours?
Yeah, mine's 6A too, I think in your.
Huh. That's convenient. Okay. Yeah, they're switched on my agenda, which I don't even
is
know
that
how
on
it's
the
possible.
script or is that on the agenda?
It's on the computerized agenda.
Computerized version it has, like you said.
If it pleases the commission, I'll continue with item 6B.
I think I just want to make sure that it's clear which goes into the
Yes.
record as which item, so we don't cross our
Thank you. It
recommendation.
was our intent to have the conditional use permit read first because
And I am okay with that. I just want to make sure that we're clear on which
yes, thank you.
which item is being discussed and the proper recommendation is incorporated. So 6B. So we're calling conditional use 6B, right? Is that
Sure, and if it's okay, we'll take 6B out of order and hear that first, this conditional use permit.
I think that works for
Can we just double check and see how it's on the,
notice, right?
right?
Yeah. Can we just pause for a moment just to make sure we're consistent?
Mine has, the agenda that I downloaded online has 6A as the conditional use permit.
Yes, and that's what I remember in researching it. Just our computers are showing the opposite. So I guess the agenda...
It's a glitch.
A glitch. Computers don't have those. What are you talking about? Yeah. All right. So we will follow the how it was notarized or noticed, and 6A will be the conditional use permit.
6A will be the conditional use permit that I am presenting right now.
Thank you for the clarification, and my apologies for the delay. Thank you. Yep.
So I will continue, again, talking about some of the adjacent properties to 2700 White Lane. To the north, you have vacant, undeveloped land on both sides. To the east also is vacant, undeveloped land, and then to the south and west, you have White Lane and Highway 99, State Route 99. Looking at development that's beyond those adjacent properties, you have a self-storage, multifamily to the north, followed by single-family. To the east, you have multifamily, some restaurants and gas station. And then across White Lane, you have some gas stations, some restaurants, and that's followed by a motel and additional single-family homes in the form of mobile homes. This site contains 4 main structures that was constructed in 1965. It has a 5th structure, smaller structure, but that's just a mechanical room. The building or the hotel consists of 151 dwelling units ranging in size from 262 to 292 square feet. Some of the amenities that will be provided are a community space, cooking facilities with a food bank, laundry facilities, game room, swimming pool, and spa. If this conditional use permit is approved, the applicant is proposing additional landscaping along the frontage. And to provide just a little bit of background and taken from the staff report, this was initially submitted as a general plan amendment and zone change. It was considered on July 20th, 2023. At that meeting, we did have multiple individuals from the single-family neighborhood to the north come out and raise concerns. To allow additional time to address some of those concerns, it was continued to August 3rd, 2023, at which time it was referred back to staff so the project could be further evaluated. The staff report notes that there was a recent code enforcement action on February 6th of this year. Everything was abated, and that is now clear. Subsequent to the August 3rd meeting, when it was referred back, there were 2 neighborhood outreach. That was held on November 11th of last year and February 21st, which is last Wednesday. Staff was not in attendance, so I will rely on the applicant and members or residents who may be in the audience to speak on the outcome of those meetings. We did receive no comments in opposition, and we did receive 2 comments late. One was from Caltrans, and these were transmitted in a memorandum. One was from Caltrans talking about a drive approach on the adjacent property, which is not part of this project site. And then we received some letter in support from Reed Loban, if I said his name correctly. And again, that was a letter in support. In order to approve a conditional use permit, there's 2 findings that must be made. The first, that the proposed use is deemed essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare, and that the proposed use is in harmony with the various elements and objectives of the general plan. The staff report provides some of that information for your commission to consider. And if those findings can be made, you can add conditions of approval. And what I would ask is, once the discussion turns to conditions of approval, I have another slide that will talk a little bit more about what can and cannot be imposed as conditions. The commission has several options considering this conditional use permit. The first is to approve as requested, and that includes staff's recommended conditions of approval that are attachment A to the resolution. If during deliberations and public comments there's conditions that need to be modified, you can approve the conditional use permit with modified conditions. If there are questions that need to be answered that are unavailable at this time and staff can answer those within a specific time, this project can be continued to a date certain. If it's going to take staff longer and that time is unknown, this project could be referred back to staff, at which time it would be re-advertised for a new public hearing. Or if those findings cannot be made, the conditional use permit could be denied. At this time, staff is requesting that you accept public comment and deliberate and then render a decision on this conditional use permit. That completes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The public hearing is now open. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Gregory Frank. I am the applicant and the architect for the Blanco project. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for a great presentation and summary of our project. As you stated, we are here today regarding a proposed conversion of an existing hotel into a studio apartment complex. Our proposal seeks a conditional use permit to convert the 151 room hotel into studio apartments. These studio units are proposed without kitchens and will be permitted as a congregate residence per the California Building Code. Once the conditional use permit is approved, we will work closely with the building department to change the use designation and implement the conditions of approval. Our hope is to ensure that the transition to a residential complex is smooth and seamless. Our goal is to create a welcoming and inclusive environment where residents can thrive. A lot has changed since we began working on this project almost 2 years ago. The last time we were at Planning Commission, our request was for a zone change from a C2 regional commercial zone to R4 high density multiple family dwelling zone. To our fault, we did not engage the community to gather their comments. This was not intentional, but purely an oversight, as we were focused on changing the zone to what we had perceived to be a less restrictive zoning. After the last Planning Commission meeting, we received recommendations from the Development Services Director, City Attorney, City Council members, and City staff that a conditional use permit may prove to be a better path than the zone change and general plan amendment. After careful consideration, we pulled the zone change application and submitted an application for the conditional use permit. Since the last Planning Commission meeting was held in August, we've held 2 formal community outreach meetings with the neighbors and our team. We've also had the chance to better develop our operations statement, good neighbor policy, and a code of conduct policy. The code of conduct policy is now an addendum to all new leases. Church Without Walls has organized community events for the residents and neighbors. Lots of wraparound services for residents have been added, and we will continue to work with great organizations such as the Open Door Network, Flood Ministries, CAPK, and Clinica Sierra Vista, just to name a few. We fully understand that change can sometimes evoke concerns, especially among neighbors. Rest assured, we are committed to engaging with the community throughout this process, listening to their feedback, and addressing any legitimate concerns that may arise. We want to be part of this community and help make this a better place. An example of this would be our engagement with the Neighborhood Watch program. It is vital that we help make sure that this neighborhood is safe and clean. Speaking of crime, the University of California, Irvine, and this was sent out in the memo today, published a study in 2022 that showed that affordable housing does not increase crime in neighborhoods. It actually raises the property values in some areas. We'd love to see this trend continue in this neighborhood. We have representatives from building ownership, property management, and security team here to expand on some of these issues and that we've presented to staff and also answer any of your questions. Thank you for your time this evening. I welcome any questions or feedback you may have, especially regarding the change of use and the building permit process and any of the related required improvements from the conditions of approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Hello, my name is Daniel Sade. I'm part of the ownership of the Blanco 2700 White Lane. We are putting there a low-income housing for 151 units. Currently, if I remember correctly, there are about 150 residents in the place right now. Through our different projects that we are doing, including in Bakersfield on Rio Mirada, we are seeing huge transformation of the people that are coming in and are tenants in our properties. We see them integrating back into society, being productive members, getting jobs. We see people that are that have been homeless for ages and are coming in, having a house, having a home, and then from there continuing on to other houses and jobs, and even college graduates that are doing it through this process. We collaborate with a lot of community organizations that are coming and helping us with services in the properties. And I really believe that we are added value to the overall community. And I think that we are trying at least to help, and I think that we are helping. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Reed Lovin. I'm one of the co-founders of the security company that works at the Blanco. The security company is BL Solutions. I am a retired sergeant from the Kern County Sheriff's Office. The co-founder, Richard Garrett, is a retired lieutenant from the Kern County Sheriff's Office. A brief background is that our motivation in entering the private sector was to do exactly this: help the community, help the citizens of our community liaison or work better with law enforcement. To be honest, our initial motivation was not to work in the low-income housing space. But as we met, and the Clemmer and Company Property Management and the investment group represented by Daniel tonight, we learned that there was a distinct need to assist projects like this in becoming better parts of the community. Now, from our law enforcement background, we can speak on the types of security services provided, the techniques used to ensure the safety and security and quality life of the residents of those communities. You guys have seen the letter that I wrote in support of this project, which cites even the own Kern County Housing Authority, some difficulties that governments have had with producing the required number of housing units, but then also the assimilation of these types of populations within the community. I certainly am happy to answer any of those technical questions. I don't want to bore you, but I can tell you that what we see here is a team, and that's really the important thing to notice. We have local government that is concerned. Your own mission statement is concerned about providing quality of life and the opportunity for the residents, the citizens of Bakersfield. The housing developers, Daniel, are concerned with giving people an opportunity to become more productive members of society and that step up. And that's through much more than just an apartment or a front door. That's by engaging these other community organizations like CAPK, like Kern Health Systems, like Clinica Sierra Vista, and providing the wraparound services needed to support those people as they continue to seek personal growth. Part of that is also security services, a very small piece of that, but that's working with the community that surrounds the projects like the Blanco. Well, Clemmer and Company has already started a neighborhood watch program with BPD and Met, and they are taking steps to expand that. From my understanding, the local neighborhood has also taken the same steps. So we have two committed groups of people that are really looking for a way to align. You know, I was having a conversation with somebody recently regarding this project, and they said, this is not a question of whether or not this project is needed. It's a question of whether or not we can get it right as a team. So, as speaking for BL Solutions, as speaking part of this team that exists right now, we are committed. We are committed to working with the community. We're committed to working with the property developers, the property management, and the tenants so that we can make Bakersfield better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Holt, and I'm from Church Without Walls. During 2023, the annual PIT count of those experiencing homelessness was 1,948 people. And within the Bakersfield city limits, it was 815 people. And it's expected to go up even more this year as we await for those totals to come in for last year. The Blanco plays a huge needed role in helping to bring this number down. At a time where there are hardly any available openings for housing, and rent has skyrocketed and continues to skyrocket. By not approving this location, most of these residents will return right back out to the streets, undoing what many have worked hard to help alleviate. I've personally witnessed the managers of the Blanco build partnerships with nonprofit organizations in an effort to have those organizations bring services directly to the residents, offering daily living skills, encouragement, hope, referrals, in order to progress past the ingrained homeless state of mind and behaviors that sometimes come with that. Church Without Walls is one of these organizations, and we have partnered with the Blanco for over a year, going out to the Blanco quarterly, where we are able to continue to bring hope and encouragement and referrals for a transformed life. And some of these residents we used to serve at our site while they were living on the streets. And some that we see out at the Blanco at our outreaches actually come from the neighborhood because they hear the music, they hear the laughter, and they know that they are also welcome to join in what's going on there when we go out there. So for those that don't approve this project, respectfully, my question to ponder for you is, would you like to be a part of helping to alleviate the amount of homelessness in our city, or would you like to be part of contributing to the rising number of homelessness in our city? And respectfully, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers wishing to speak in favor? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
My name is Paula Lee, and thanks to the Blanco, I have a job there, and I'm a resident. I have a home. I'm not in my car. And these are my coworkers that live there with me.
I'm Melinda Branch. I'm a resident as well and work there. And working hard as a team to get it all together and try to do the best we can.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
I'm Martha Martinez. I also live there and have a job there with them too, and I'm the one that graduated college right there, and being right there in the living there with my kids, and it's gotten me pretty far from where I was at from the beginning, and I really thank them for that.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Michael Turnip Seed. I represent the Kern County Taxpayers Association. Your decision tonight is critical to the city's ability to address low-income housing goals going forward. The city has spent millions of dollars investing in projects at the Kern County Housing Authority. The last two projects of the Kern County Housing Authority were $500,000 a unit and $425,000 a unit. This privately funded project, the Blanco, will be less than 40% of that. The city cannot afford to build enough low-income housing using their current model of the Kern County Housing Authority. To meet low-income housing goals, the city must encourage private sector investment. Tonight, you will be sending a message on the future of low-income housing in the city of Bakersfield. The city must have private investment if they expect to meet their low-income housing goals. I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration, and I hope you support the project.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers in favor of the project? Oh. Seeing no additional speakers in favor, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Right. I'll kick off the party. How about that? My name is Kevin Lively. Any other info you need?
Just your public comments. Thank you.
Great, cool. So last week, as they mentioned, they hosted a community discussion at the Crest Restaurant. It wasn't a formal event like this. It was very casual conversations, one-on-one, two tables. It was nice and polite. Their message was very clear, as they are presenting again tonight, that they're doing everything out of the kindness of their heart. And they're doing it privately, as that guy just said, because of the cost and inefficiency of city and state governments. They were very big on pushing how much better and more efficient they are. They cited examples of the projects that balloon in cost all around California, and they brought up the new mini houses and the little duplexes. And the way they're describing them, I was expecting like a bunch of tough sheds in a field, but they're beautiful. They're fantastic. Anyone who is staying there is going to have so much pride to live in something that has a full kitchenette, a living space, a bedroom, and a bathroom, as opposed to a hotel. It just seems like a better opportunity for anybody to get a fresh start when you have all the tools available to you. They also explained that they were initially led down the wrong path based on the city attorney's advice. I don't know who that is, if it's one person, if it's a whole department, or anything like that, but they're very adamant that they were given bad advice, which is odd because if I had a big investment company, I would have my own legal team look into it. And as we all know, the way this whole project started was not really on the up and up. So they explained to us that another fact that came up in past meetings was the Blanco being a top 10 police dispatch place. And Reed said that is actually a good thing because it means the residents are confident in calling for help. Didn't touch upon the fact that there's still a need to call, and the top 10 for one property in a whole city is still pretty significant. I don't know if we've heard any updated numbers on the police dispatch calls for the Blanco, but it's something to look into. They acknowledged the increased number of unhoused individuals in the surrounding area. Up and down our streets every morning, it's like a parade of shopping carts, people laying on the ground, but they're also very quick to remind us that those aren't residents, so they're there for the city's jurisdiction. So again, they're not doing any wrong. So with that, they did propose Reed mentioned building a community center adjacent to the Blanco that would have medical clinics, a food bank. What else did I have in there? Food distribution, mental health services, job services, and stuff. He called it a community center. I proposed a resource center because a community center to me has a gym and a library and a place for me to take a pottery class. So upon hearing about this, the other gentleman, the first one who spoke, countered and said, oh no, we're targeting that land to lease out to a fast food restaurant. So there's discrepancies in the stories coming through. If anybody, in the next part of this meeting can clarify that. But those are two majorly different things, especially if you plan on building a resource center, a community center that is going to offer, mental health services, food banks and all that stuff. It seems like it would become more of a central hub to attract more people into our community who don't necessarily live there. So my neighbors I'm sure they're going to hop on this microphone right after me. They're going to talk about how the neighborhood has been affected since the founding of the Blanco. But I just have one little anecdote. We've never been a big trick-or-treat community or neighborhood, which stinks. I love Halloween, man. If I could decorate and pass out king-size candy bars to the kids every year, that'd be awesome. But this year, we actually only had like 2 groups of kids. We did have more trick-or-treaters. They were all adults, older than me, with no kids. I don't feel safe handing out candy anymore because of what has come to our community. It stinks because my girls they don't like candy. They don't trick or treat, but they love handing out candy. Well, can't do that anymore because some strange adults are going to come looking for some candy bars. It's bizarre. The Blanco team did ask me how they can earn my trust, and I was frank with them. I said they opened and they continue to operate this housing development as a hotel, but they're not collecting the transient tax. And again, they started everything wrong right off the bat. And I asked them, and I'm going to ask you guys, how is this different than a driver getting pulled over, being found without a license or registration, and then just shrugging and going, okay, I guess I'll figure it out now. You're getting caught after the fact. It seemed like their business plan was to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And as somebody who from the young age got like the fear of God instilled with them, don't break any rules, don't break any laws, it's just super frustrating to see people with money just get away with stuff like this. It's not isolated to them. It's a national issue. But despite the feel-good stories, again, my trust in them is low. They're saying they're doing this all out of the goodness out of their hearts. But I'm skeptical. Let me put on my greedy capitalist millionaire top hat for a second and just take a look at how I'm viewing their business plan. I'm rich. I live down south. I can buy an old hotel, flip it for minimal cost. It's not in my community, so it doesn't affect me at all. And then there's already a built-in market of people being handed vouchers to use. There's no competition in the area, so I wouldn't have to do anything like invest in landscaping or security or improvements to the property because there's always going to be a demand. As long as people have vouchers, people need the super low-income housing, there's no reason why a typical investor would invest. That's why you don't see like the dollar store get remodeled. You have a demographic, you know who your audience is, and you build to it. So, as I said during the previous meetings, this is obviously an issue that needs fixing. There's so many people down on their luck, but there's a right way to tackle a problem, and there's a wrong way. As I said, this has clearly started the wrong way. Can they course correct? I super hope so, because as the other people just said, it's a catch-22, right? They kind of have us by the throats saying, hey, if you don't approve this, you're evil because now 150 people are going to be put out onto the streets. Granted, it's a problem I created, but now it's up to you to figure it out. So that is my main issue for them to overcome to earn my trust, and I'm sure some of my neighbors would agree with me. And I thank my neighbors for stepping up in the very first meeting, because it seemed like they were coming in, and to paraphrase old man Jenkins, who owns the haunted amusement park, they would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those meddling neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers wishing to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
My name is Thomas Estrada. Excuse me. Homeowner in the area. Tonight, I've been at all the meetings, but tonight I heard the term of studio apartments, and I believe I heard without kitchenettes or whatever. And I would just like more clarification on that question. How many? There's 151 units. how many people would be living in the studio apartments. And at the last meeting with the group, they also talked about improvements in the area, and maybe somebody could follow up on what improvements would actually be done or in the works to being finished. And that's all I have.
Thank you. If I could ask the city attorney, the most appropriate time to answer questions would be during the question period. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. We'll address those during the question. Are there any other speakers in opposition to the project? So please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
My name is Deanna DeBont, and I'm not against it, but I do want to clarify something. Mr. Frank had made a comment about, or shared about, it was Irvine's study. I'm not sure who paid for this study, but all I know is I've lived there for over 45 years, and the last year and a half, every week, I get somebody wants to buy our home, and they're realtors. They're quoting 1975 when the home was built. The house next to me was built in 68. It actually was the model home for the whole property, and they're asking for 1968 prices. It does affect the bottom dollar. We have generational homes that we've invested in, not necessarily in the bank, but in these properties. They are going down. So it does affect our property. I totally support what they're doing, but just hearing about the studio apartments now, that's the first time that we heard about that. We don't want to know how many people are going to be in there. We were also told at the last meeting that they were going to build basically help for these people to be there. Clinica Cervesta is on Wilson Road, a huge one that they could go to. But if you're going to have another entity there for them to go to get help, we have all kinds of low-income housing that they don't require that extra help. Maybe having it right there is going to bring a whole lot more people there. We already have a problem. We already also have the Motel 6 is just changed their name to Motel 6 Extended Care or Extended Stay, and we're finding out they're staying there for free. And we actually have another problem there. And then there's also Motel 6 behind Denny's as well. So it's not the people that are in the hotel that we're having problems with. It's the people that they're bringing with them. And I don't even think they're bringing it with them necessarily, but we've got a huge problem. And you can see because we're at the top 10. And we were not at the top 10 of the police department showing up there. But like I said, I support it. We just need to, again, like the security guard said, we need to work together, and we're trying. We do have our community, our what do you call it, neighborhood watch going. We're working with them. We drive around, literally. I don't have a lot of time, but every night I'll go around, and we drive around just to help make everything safe. But things happen between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning. We can stay up only so long. But thank you, and God bless everyone.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers wishing to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing no additional speakers in opposition, does any commissioner have any questions for the public or staff on this item? Please remember this is not the time to express opinion, just ask questions. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kidder. I think I want to get right to that question that's on the that was presented. How many people per room are going to be allowed to stay in each room?
It is 2 people per unit.
And these would be would be doubled up, or would it just be if you had couples? You know, like So I guess my question is, if you have individuals, are they going to be rooming with other people that are individuals, or how's that work?
No. It's just, if there is an individual, that's the individual that rents the unit. If he has a mate, somebody with him, a partner, then they'll be there together. If not, that's just his.
Okay. The young lady behind you wanted to chime in, so let's let her talk.
Hi, my name is Tasha Ross. I'm the property supervisor, and to answer that, so we do up to 2 adults maximum per unit. We do get a lot of voucher programs. A lot of them are for one person, or that will include a spouse. If they do have a spouse, they're allowed those 2, but a lot of the vouchers that we do receive only allow one person in the unit, and that's on the voucher side and on their lease as well.
And so are you obligated to take anybody with a voucher that comes? If you have a
No, we
room?
still do a full like background. We do run their credit. We do look at certain things. A little more lenient if they do receive a voucher, but we still do our standard background.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question. I appreciate it. The other thing that are these transitional housing, or are these people just going to stay for a short period of time, or how long are these people going to stay in your studios?
As long as they want. This is permanent housing. We have people similar to that in our other project that have been there for over a year, people that have been here for a long period of times as well, and hopefully they will stay, or if they decided they outgrew the place and they want to move somewhere else, which we had as well, that happens also.
So there's no program in place to bring people in and then get them into other housing?
Not that no.
Okay. And my last question has to do with a comment that was made about a community center. We're not considering any kind, this is Mr. Johnson, we're not considering any kind of community center as part of this conditional use permit, are we?
No, you're not.
Okay.
Other than if they have an interior, if they wanted to set aside something interior.
Yeah, we're only
There's
dealing
no
with the
exterior.
services that they're going to provide. We're not talking about any kind of community center that's going to have other
No.
stuff going on. Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Strickland.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have a couple of questions. I want to hit a couple that I think were from public. So I guess the first question is probably for the architect. You had stated there's no kitchens, but there are kitchenettes, right? And I've got other questions for the applicant, so you guys might want to just sit closer, maybe.
Thank you for the question. Yes, you're correct. Currently, there are no kitchens in these rooms. These are traditional hotel rooms. They do have a microwave and a refrigerator, more of an apartment-style refrigerator. They're going to be, 8 to 10 cubic feet, so not a standard-size refrigerator, but not a mini fridge either. We will have the ability to place like a hot plate in the rooms, but as far as a full kitchenette with an actual oven and a range, that will not be provided at this time. There's a potential that we could add them at a later date.
To clarify, am I wrong in the site plan shows that the small and large studios will have a kitchenette with a 1200 watt and a 1500 watt burner? Isn't that on the site plan?
It may have been earlier, and if that, we did remove those from the plan, so if that did come across in the plan set.
I guess I didn't note if there was an updated plan set, so that may be on me.
Yeah, the intent currently is to just build these out as sleeping rooms without kitchens. And primary reason is once we start developing kitchens in the building, we're going to be required to upgrade the electrical service to the building, which is going to take, anywhere from a year to a year and a half to do, and will end up costing $500,000.
Okay, sorry, hang on one second. Let me just make sure. And I guess question for staff, is that your understanding on the latest map set then?
Yes, I see. It says new cooktop, Ramblewood, 110 volt, 2700 watt radiant burner.
Yeah, and that's in the agenda for this. So we can move past that for now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that was it. That's probably going to be, well, so going off of the site plan, is the painting on the outside of the building already done?
Yes.
So the outside work of the map set, what work has already been completed?
The work that's been completed is we put a new roof on the building. We've added fire sprinklers to the building. The exterior has been painted. We have a perimeter fence up on the north side of the property. And that's, I believe, it for now.
So landscaping still left to do, things like that?
Right. So the landscaping will be a condition of this approval. We have a landscape concept in place. The full working drawings haven't been done, and that will be permitted after this approval.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's it for at least the site plans. For staff, kind of going off of public comments, do we have the updated dispatch numbers? I know that they're referring to the July 20th Planning Commission. I think that changed after, but do we know what that is?
We do not have those current numbers.
Thank you. And then another question for staff. Going off of this zoning request, because I think the applicant stated that there are 150 people living here that I think are under lease now. But the ability to lease people in a hotel is contingent on the approval of tonight, right? So they can't offer leases in a hotel zoning currently, correct?
That would be correct, yes. So they are operating in violation, and that is a code enforcement violation waiting to be cleared one way or another.
And then it came up in either the 20th or the August 3rd Planning Commission meeting. Do we know if they've caught up their transient tax that they had stopped paying?
We did put in a request to the finance department to get the updated information. I do know they went approximately at least 1 year from August 2022 to August 2023 without paying. The finance department did not get back to us in time for this meeting.
And then following that question, in staff's understanding, was the request for a zoning change / conditional use permit, was that separate than informing the owner that they were out of compliance and paying their tax, or was that after?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Strickland, would you repeat that?
To clarify, they stopped paying transient tax at the hotel.
Yes.
Then the city reached out that they weren't paying tax. Then the application change was requested?
No, it was part of the transient occupancy tax not being paid, which initiated the original general plan amendment zone change application.
Got it, but not the other way around. It wasn't a general plan, and then we found out they weren't paying. It was, did the city reach out to the owner to say we're missing the transient tax, and that's when they said something to the line of we're not?
No, I do not believe that's correct. No, I don't believe the city reached out to them.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to understand some of the questions that were asked, and then I think I had some questions that I'd emailed that I wanted to go over. So we've answered that. Sorry, little messed up. That one's answered now. I think if you have any other questions, I think most of mine are answered, but I may have missed one. I may come back in.
Understood. Thank you. I have a couple questions. First and foremost, a speaker in opposition had requested some information about the profile of the community and what was being proposed? I don't know. Potentially the project architect would probably be the best. Can you clarify for speaker the breakdown of unit type and the allocation of unit size? And then I believe the other question was regarding extent of improvements. Ms. King, was that right? Okay.
I actually don't have the numbers of the small suites versus, or small studios versus the large studios. That was probably included in the staff report. The only difference there is I think it's 20 to 30 square feet, and the main difference was that originally when the hotel was built, essentially one half of the building is a little bit deeper to make way for rooms that had 2 double beds, where the other rooms were just a king-size bed.
Thank you. But it would be correct in 100% studio apartment.
100%.
Thank you. And then just so that everyone in the audience is clear on planned improvements, can you describe basically the improvements planned for the facility, both items that have been completed and that will be completed?
Sure. So projects to be completed, sanitation is actually requiring us to add 4 trash enclosures. So we have those planned on site, full landscaping around the property. We will have to restripe a lot of the parking, which we're going to make way for some accessibility improvements for handicap parking and access to the right-of-way. Public Works is also requiring a new street light to be added, which we obviously are in favor of. We'd love the city to pay for it, but we're in favor of it because obviously more light in the neighborhoods is going to create a safer environment.
Great. Thank you. And then, thank you. Second question regards the community meetings. We were given little information about what occurred, what happened from the applicant. If you could just provide a brief summary of findings of what the interaction with the community.
Yeah, and I apologize. We should have put something in writing and got it to the planning commissioners. Our meetings were notified by our property management company. They walked the neighborhood and handed out as many flyers as we could. We wanted to get as many of the neighbors to these meetings as possible. They were rather informal. We really wanted to find out what their concerns were. We've discussed crime, homelessness, litter throughout the neighborhood, and really what our intent here is to listen and try and figure out ways that we could fix all of those items. We know it's not going to be 100%, but we wanted to do our best. The meeting the week before last, actually, I really enjoyed the meeting. I saw a lot of the neighbors come together, connect with old stories, exchange phone numbers, and I'm sure email addresses. I hope they had as good of an experience meeting or reconnecting with some of their neighbors. But in a quick snapshot, that's essentially what happened.
And then just a succinct question from the meeting. Were there any outcomes as far as an opportunity where the Blanco and the community came together on possibly, has it informed any action on your plan to move forward with the project?
Is there anything we've added? I think our last meeting, the week before last, really was to present some of the policies that we are presenting here today. We want to be as transparent as we can, and so we're trying to show that we are putting these code of conduct policies in place, and wanted to explain to the neighbors that now that these will be a condition of this approval, or they may be tied to the lease, we want to explain to everyone that there are some ramifications for some of these rules getting broken. Not anyone who receives a lease to live in this place can stay forever. You break the rules and there are serious consequences. We've had people within the last few months that have been evicted from the facility. And so we discussed some of those items.
Great, thank you. And then my last question might be for the architect, might be more for management and operations. Looking at your operational statement, there appears to be a list of services provided to residents within the community. The language is a little bit, well, the language expresses wanting to provide these. Is there a commitment from the Blanco to provide those services? And are there set intervals that those things are, that those opportunities listed here, job opportunities, medical service assistance, pet care, clothing, basic needs, family care, self-care referrals, are those things that that are an established practice or a would be nice to do?
Let me have Daniel speak to that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All those things are already being in place and already provided. There is no law that makes us, okay, you have to do this and this. We're just landlords.
Yes.
Okay, and as landlords, there is certain responsibilities that we have and certain that we don't. All these things we're doing as amenities to our people. But we have a vision, and what we want to see is we want to see all the help that these people get in order to continue and thrive. So we have them, and we will have more.
Okay. And then a question then is, as an applicant, would you be agreeable to include these services as a condition of the approval of the project?
Well, I think it's going to be odd that you're going to put it as a condition for the project, and I think it's a very dangerous precedence for something like that. But I can tell you, we've started to do those things, as you've heard from Church Without Walls.
Yes.
Before any application was done. Okay, this is not something that we are saying that we're doing to look nice. This is what we are doing. In the other property that we have in Bakersfield, we're already done with all the permitting and everything. All these things are there and just growing. Okay, so it is there. It's all for our benefit. This is what we want to do.
But you wouldn't like to not see it as part of the conditions of approval for the project?
I don't want, well, I have to be very open. As you saw probably throughout these things, we are not very smooth, not this big conglomerate that people think that we are. We are basically three main partners that just decided to do something about a situation, okay? So we are not very versed in this. We are not legally inclined. We don't have all these things. But what we have learned is the minute that something is put there as a name, that's it. Now you are with cuffs and you cannot move from this. And now you have this guillotine over your head that is like, if you don't, now you're going to get, and that's make us very weary.
Okay.
So that's where the fear comes from. Other than that, I can tell you, without this, my own personal guarantee is that, yes, this is going to happen because there is no other plan other than to do this. And we are working to do more projects like that, and that is the line of what we're going to do. And we hope to be able to be successful. In other places, it's a lot easier than it is here, just to let you know. So we've already are up and running in other areas that we started way after this. And this is our mission. This is where we're going. So I don't see it changing.
Okay, so as an applicant, you would not want to see these added to the condition of approval? That was the question. Sorry, we're in an awkward, I can't say what I think.
Yes.
I can only ask questions. So the answer would be no, right?
It's something that I will tell you, I need to talk to an attorney to see, is this something that is dangerous or not? I don't know.
Understood. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, if that's what... Here is the thing. Today, we'll make the decision if this project continues or not. This is the situation that we're in. When we were here back in September, and we were going for the zone change, and I was asked why, and I said it's because of financing. We could not get financing because we don't have the CUP. Now we are at a point that we're paying 11.5% per year, okay? We are at about $120,000 per month because we couldn't get financing. Today is the term. By Monday, the bank is not willing to extend this. If you guys are not deciding to do this, which is okay, and that's your prerogative, just so you know, that project is done and over with. We are losing this building to the bank. They already informed us that on Monday they are sending us notice of default, and that is done. So this is where we are at. We are drowning here. We are not a nonprofit organization, but we are operating with no profit. So I don't think this is understood by the city with everything that is going on and all the red tape and all the grinding that we're going through. But this is the situation. It's like take it or leave it. This is what it is.
I do have to kind of interject. I'm sorry. I was engaged in what you were saying. This is a question answer. I think that would be a perfect rebuttal comment.
Okay.
We're getting into
Yes, that's correct.
we're getting into time that is not answering questions. So thank you.
Fair enough.
I appreciate it.
Can I add one comment about the services?
Sure.
I mean, this
As an answer to a question, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we did look at classifying this as a supportive services facility. We understand that we are providing services, but the long-term goal here would be to get everybody back on their feet and hopefully remove those services. So I think that's why at this time we don't really want the services tied directly to the CUP.
The project. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Are there any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Biddle. Oh, you can go first, and then Commissioner Strickland. Yes, Commissioner Biddle.
Okay. First, I think it's for staff, and I don't know if I can ask that. Do we know what the housing vouchers for a room this size are through the housing authority? Is that public information, or is that something that's kept private?
We're going to have a representative from ECD come forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paige McAllister. I'm an Economic and Community Development Planner 2 with the City of Bakersfield, and I work specifically in affordable housing. The Housing Authority issues vouchers. The maximum that the tenant would have to pay is 30% of their income. So that can range. The tenant will pay anywhere from nothing to $1,000, depending on household size, income, and so forth. So it varies, but you could probably find that information from the Housing Authority.
And then for the applicant, I've heard different things. I heard studio apartment at first, and I heard sleeping rooms, and then I heard landlord, so now I'm a little bit confused. Are these going to be available for rent to the public? So how does this work?
Excuse me. So yes, we actually do have some tenants that are in there that are private pay. So they receive just over what they pay for their rent and like Social Security or anything like that. So we're able to offer them that. They don't have any utility charges or anything if they cable, Wi-Fi, what have you. But we do have some that are private pay.
You do, okay. And then I also heard for the first time about the property across the street. Is that already purchased? Is that just something that's a vision for the future? What was that brought up to the community meeting?
It's actually the property to the east. We're currently in the process of a lot line adjustment, moving the property line from right next to the drop-off area, the covered drop-off area. We're moving it to the east. And so that dirt lot there is the one in question.
I think that's all for my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Biddle. Commissioner Strickland.
Thank you. This is probably for property management. I had sent an email out kind of asking what services and what organizations locally that the Blanco works with. And I received back a list of organizations. And it kind of goes into Vice Chair Cater's question. Are they currently working with let me read them out just so it's on the record. The Open Door Network, Flood, CapK, Aging and Adult Services, City Serve, Good Samaritan Hospital, Kern Regional, Around the Clock, Stewart's, Garden Pathways, Church Without Walls, CVAF, Kern Health Systems, and Clinica Sierra Vista. Is the Blanco currently working with all of those organizations, or is that planned working with?
We actually already do work with them. So we accept, if it's a voucher program through Open Door or Flood, sometimes it's a full voucher, sometimes it's deposit assistance, or just to get somebody into housing. And then they're, to jump back on that question, they're able to pay the rent, but they can't come up with the deposit. We're also working with, let's see. So say Clinica Sierra Vista through Kern Health Systems, they've reached out because they do know that we have some tenants that may not have a vehicle, may not have all the things that they need to receive medical care. So they've asked if they can bring a mobile unit and bring their doctors and come see some of those. So a couple of these are in the works, but the majority we already work with, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. And, oh, there was a question and I just lost it. That's embarrassing. Oh, I just wanted to confirm that the organization's private, it's not support services, it's not transitional. These are optional things that the
Correct.
Blanco is doing, but they could also stop doing that as well.
Correct, yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you. Commissioner Biddle.
Sorry, last one. Is there, for security, is there a way for the community to be able to reach the security there with you guys? Or is there like a hotline phone number or anything like that? Or do they just call the Blanco?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Biddle. That's probably the most common question I get. At all of the community meetings that have been held, any conversations that I've had, and the folks over here that are nodding their heads will corroborate that I provide them with our supervisor phone number. I've even provided my own cell phone number to them so that in the event the community needs assistance with navigating the law enforcement system, please understand that there is a limitation on the authority to act by a security company. However, because of my vast law enforcement experience, I certainly can be helpful in liaising between law enforcement services and the folks that are in need.
Thank you. All right. With that, we will now provide a rebuttal period. This time provides an opportunity for 5-minute total speaking time for those in favor and those in opposition to the project. With this, I'll say, is there anyone who wishes to provide a rebuttal on this item? If so, please prepare to step to the podium. Please note each side will only have 5-minute total time, so make your comments succinct without repeating remarks of previous speakers to make sure that everyone that would like to can provide comments. I also note that since we last heard from the opposition, we will begin with a 5-minute rebuttal for those in favor of the project. So with that, are there any speakers who wish to provide rebuttal comments in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Thank you. I just want to state that there's still a lot of work to be done here. Like, once we do receive approval on this conditional use permit, we still have a lot of planning to do. There's a lot of building permits that we need to apply for. And so there still is going to be a substantial amount of work to be done, a lot of capital to be spent on this project. So we're not done by any means. I think this project is only going to get better as it goes.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Oh yes, Gregory Frank. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in favor?
Tanya Holt. I heard some people talk about crime and how there's an increase of crime in that area since possibly the Blanco started. But I just wanted to bring it to attention that crime is kind of going up all over the place. That it's a common thing that's happening in a lot of places. And so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in favor that would like to provide rebuttal comments? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
My name is Tasha Ross. I just wanted to touch base. Somebody had mentioned something about the crime rates again in the neighborhood because of the new tenants there. While we were meeting with the police department for the neighborhood watch meeting that we would like to engage with, they let us know that there have only been, in this calendar year, of course, we're only to March, 4 calls, which is very low for that area for the entire year so far. And one of those, we actually called them out ourselves for help with an eviction. So just a little update.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers in favor of providing rebuttal comments? Seeing no additional speakers in favor, we will now close the rebuttal comment for those in favor, open up 5-minute total time for speakers in opposition to the project to provide rebuttal comments. If you'd like to provide rebuttal comments, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
My name is Thomas Estrada, and I'm not sure if this is the right time. I'd just like more information on the studio and the numbers per room, whether it's 2 adults or a single mother with 2 children would be allowed or not allowed. Just a question.
Ms. King, can you advise on the best time to answer questions? That would be
After the rebuttal, we
after
can do
rebuttal.
that.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Yep. Are there any other speakers in opposition?
Hello again. Yeah, just to kind of rebuttal the guy from the Kern County Taxpayers Association, mixed with what the Blanco staff said, I kind of just want this stated for the record for projects moving forward, and that is, yes, they could go in there and add a full kitchen. I mean, heck, they could go in there and they can demo a wall and turn two hotel rooms into a nice little 1-bedroom apartment. But as they stated, that cost money. And so when you see like those little duplexes open up as the new housing that the city opened up, yes, they cost more, but you get what you pay for. So if you're seriously investing into these people, this feels more like a Band-Aid than an actual home. So anything worth doing is worth doing right. And just to kind of reiterate to what the owner said, they really like, if you're really staring at the bank and the decision comes down today, they really do have us by the throat on what the moral thing to do is. And it's not our fault. We didn't buy this hotel. We didn't proceed illegally. We did it not to get the permits. We didn't. Part of me wants to know, is there, if somebody were to rally the residents of the Blanco, could they seek legal action against them for them having a lease for a building that's not even supposed to be an apartment? That seems like a whole separate legal issue. This is a huge mess. And again, it's not any of my neighbors' fault. We had somebody come in from out of town they could have the best intentions in the world, but the way they went about it can damage any help that the city is going to try to provide to the unhoused for the foreseeable future, just by trying to circumvent the rules. And it's just, we're between a rock and a hard place. And whatever you guys feel is the best thing moving forward, not just for the people who live there, but for all the other people who are still at the Bakersfield homeless shelter. Like, what can we do as a community to make this right and do it the right way and give them the respect and dignity they deserve? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers in opposition? We do have 2 minutes remaining. Seeing no additional speakers in opposition, I will now close the public hearing on this item. Oh, we should, if we're going to answer the question, now would be the time to do it. Is that correct?
Yes, we can do it now.
Okay. And I believe if management from the Blanco would mind answering the rebuttal question regarding, I believe it was
For the housing, for the
maximum
limits.
occupancy. Yeah.
So in regard to the tenants, again, we go back to the voucher and how many people are on that voucher. If it's private pay, it's no more than 2. Yes, that does not include children. So that is any adult over 18. We do accept children, but if it's multiple people that we, of course, aren't going to put, you know, a large family in a 1-bedroom studio, you should say. We have other properties. I work for our main office with Clemmer and Company. We do have other properties. A lot of times the workers or anything through whatever service provider they're with will ask us for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, something larger. But for this property, it's 2 adults and we do have children.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now, having that question answered, I will close the public hearing on this item and return to the commission for comment and action. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cater. Well, I want to say that I appreciate the outreach to the community. I think that the tone has changed since we first heard this project in June or July of 2023. And so I commend you for reaching out to the community and making some effort to consider their issues. I also appreciate hearing from not only the neighbors, but also from some of your residents that actually live in the apartments, studios, whatever you want to call them. I think that was very helpful to hear both from the neighbors in the neighborhood and the residents that live in it. You know, I think that on that subject of the outreach, you know, we really do encourage developers to reach out to the community and address their concerns. However, we don't require consensus. We require you to go out and talk to the people and attempt to mitigate their concerns. You know, as far as housing is concerned, we need all kinds of housing in the community, and this is one of the options. I had an opportunity to go over and see a project that is very much like this in Paso Robles, and it's a very clean and very well-run community. It's not owned by this particular group, but it is run by a community group in that community. We have another community in our town. We have one off of, I guess it's Airport Drive, Buck Owens area there. That's working very well. So I think it's important to say that these are one of the kinds of projects that we do need to have. But yeah, I think that we're trying to figure out how to get this right. You know, we approved the one that we did approve off of Buck Owens a couple of years ago. It was it was the first one we had heard, and maybe I don't know if we did good or not. It seems to be working, but I think we're learning as we go. How do we meet this particular need? From a project standpoint, the conditional use permit is really, I think, the way that planners wanted to see these kind of projects come to us, because it really does give the city and the planning commission the most amount of control over how that project operates, not only tomorrow if we approve it, but also into the future, because we still have that conditional use permit. It's conditional. You only get to do that if you continue to meet the conditions that were included in the conditional use permit. So I appreciate that that we've moved now from the zone change to the conditional use permit. I appreciate hearing from Mr. Lovin. I think that's a really good start, that we have somebody with your background, your partner's background, that's able to maybe bridge that gap between private security and still have the relationships with command at BPD and others. So I do appreciate that. I actually went out to this project myself at 3:30 in the morning. I just happened to be coming back from a project in LA, and I said, I'm going to go by this project and I'm going to see how it looks. And I was actually impressed with the amount of lighting that's out there. And I know that we're going to be doing some more there. We're going to be doing some more landscaping, some fences and all that. And there are transients in the neighborhood. I can't deny that. But there's transients in my neighborhood. So I didn't see anything that, to me, that was particularly offensive. I think that if the security continues to work on being visible, it's going to help a lot with not only your project, but the surrounding neighborhoods. And I know that you can't go out and patrol the neighborhoods, but I think just the visibility of security type people is going to help with that. We can't speak tonight about problems with the Motel 6 across the street and other things, but we'll be happy to talk to that project developer at some point too. So for me, we desperately need this kind of housing. And so I support it, but I will also support any conditions that the other commissioners might feel are necessary. I did want to ask the planning director to put up the findings requirement that we have on page 4 of your statement. Yeah, and so those are the only way we can grant a conditional use permit is if the proposed project is deemed essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare. And I don't think we can deny that this is essential and it is desirable for the public convenience of the unhoused. And that the proposed use is in harmony with various elements and objectives of the general plan. And I think that our number one in our general plan is housing. And so I feel that those thresholds have been met. And so I would support and make any motion at the appropriate time to approve this project. I have no further statement.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Strickland.
Thank you. To agree with Commissioner Coleman, yeah, we see a lot of market or above market rate housing and apartments. We don't see a lot of lower income and at need and vulnerable housing. So I think in that regard, this is a great project. I have concerns and reservations about the project itself. I'm concerned about leasing before proper approvals. I'm concerned that it does feel like this isn't a request to the Planning Commission for a project approval. It is asking the Planning Commission to be responsible for the eviction of vulnerable people or approve a project that we may have concerns on, especially tonight with Mr. Day's comments that if we don't approve tonight, this is bankrupt and out. I don't think that should be our responsibility because it came in after we moved in 150 people where they shouldn't be allowed yet. I think Church Without Walls, it was a great quote, would you like to be part of helping the homeless or causing the problem? And that shouldn't be the question asked of us today. And that's a problem I have with it. I think Vice Chair Cater had a great request to make a conditional use that, so the project is great to me if it is as it's written in the operating statement, and the CUP doesn't do anything to make sure that that's how it's always going to be. It doesn't make sure that the Howard Johnson Motel, now the Blanco, will always provide vulnerable people support systems, giving them a non-transitional, they don't have to get out in a certain amount of time. It gives them the opportunity to get on their feet and have somewhere they're proud of. Those are great. I love that. I would support the Blanco for that. I don't see anything that tells me that that'll be the case, and I'm really concerned that if we wanted to extend this, we can't, right? They're gonna go bankrupt, and I would ask the city, or maybe even the city attorney, who's responsible for rehoming 150 vulnerable families or persons if we don't approve this?
Yes, Commissioner Strickland, it wouldn't be the city's responsibility.
It would be the developer, the city, I'm sorry.
It would not be the city's responsibility.
Right, and if the applicant is tonight or else, anyway, I think I'm yammering on the same point. I'll support, or any motion that comes up, I'll support, but I'm really concerned that we're not talking about a CUP like should be in front of the Planning Commission. We're talking about the rehoming or eviction of 150 people who are already vulnerable. So I'll yield the floor.
If I could just add to that, there is a safeguard in place. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was initiated because the county was under a scenario where certain people had to be evicted, and not necessarily because of approval, but maybe it was because of an infestation or whatnot. So there is a joint county-city plan primarily for hotels, that if they have to get evicted or whatnot, that this group looks to other available spaces where people can be placed.
Sorry, I yielded, but I'd like to retake the floor. Right, but that's taking 150 spots that 150 people waiting for homes right now won't get.
That would be correct.
It doesn't keep them where they're at now. It puts them in something that's already hopefully earmarked for others to get them off the streets.
That is correct.
So just again, to rehammer the point is, it's a precarious position we're in because we're not talking zoning anymore. So now I yield the floor for good.
All right, I won't hold you to it if you want to speak again. But Commissioner Biddle.
I think I kind of mirror Mr. Strickland's comments. I was happy with the way that Daniel was talking about putting those conditions to ensure to the surrounding community that what is in that operation statement is going to be what's there 10 years from now. That's the point of a conditional use permit, is to make sure that the community feels comfortable with what's coming into their area. I would much prefer to see permanent supportive housing units go into these type of size units. We wouldn't approve this if it was a new build without a kitchen, without all of the amenities that make it a home. I wish we could know more about this communal kitchen that was going in to see, how it's going to run, but it's make or break at this point. And I didn't like that either. I didn't like coming here and making me feel as if my decision tonight is based off of having 150 people hit the streets. I sit on the board for Flood Ministries, so I do know how bad we need those housing vouchers right now, but that doesn't mean that we pass things through just for the sake of passing it through because we need it. So I'm curious to hear what else Mr. Cater has to say tonight too.
Thank you. So I would say, first off, I think housing can look like many different things. I think we're a community for too long that has had a singular vision of what housing looks like, and I think the need to provide options for people that are at all different spectrums of need. And so generally, the concept of taking underutilized transient housing and providing housing solutions for those for our community members that are the most vulnerable, I am supportive, and I think it is a great project. I think this, to me, Mr. Frank, I think you mentioned that the project maybe got off on the wrong foot, and I would completely agree with you. I think on paper, on the application, this is exactly in my view, what we should be pursuing as a community. Where are easily available housing units that we can turn into getting our fellow community members off the streets and into more permanent solutions? The problem that arose with this project is the rollout did not engage the neighborhood. The rollout did not engage the proper channels of the city staff. And so to me, the difference of tonight versus, I mean, we're basically being given the same project with completely different approval methods, which came from pretty much every a representative from every department within our city, which is not something that happens very often on our commission. And so to me, and I'll get to my questions to the applicant, a lot of that centers on accountability and trust. And I think that this was a project where the trust was not established early on. And we as a commission are looking for ways to, now that the conditional use has been identified as the mechanism to approve this site, are the appropriate trust mechanisms in place? And I would applaud staff. I think the good neighbor policy, staff worked to provide language within the conditional use that I think reflects very adequately how the good neighbor policy is actually now a condition of the project. Accountability for, I remember the first meeting, residents would say, I would come to the Blanco, there was nobody to talk to me. I had no, it was basically a project that we have no interaction with. Tonight, at least, I feel confident that's not the case. The community has spoken with the Blanco has spoken with the community. They've even enjoyed each other's company. There's work to do, there's partnerships and community initiatives like a neighborhood watch that are still being formed. But if you look at the conditions of approval, staff has included elements that are in the document of a good policy neighbor into the conditions of approval for this project. I'm also glad to hear a city that's chronically underlit, that a light is required in front of the project. I think that will be a great asset to the neighborhood. I think there's a few other locations pretty much anywhere in town where we could use another light or two. So with regards to my question regarding the good neighbor policy, I asked the applicant because this is we're an advisory body that looks at zone changes, general plan amendments, subdivision maps, and much more. The much more is limited to the purview of planning and development within our city. Creating hours of operation, creating lighting, creating security, those are conditions that we can readily quantify and put on a project. The issue I have, given the history of this site, is a operational statement that speaks about wanting to be a certain thing, but not committing to be that thing, is unfortunately not something that our commission has the purview to review. It is not our purview to say you have to provide supportive housing, you have to provide job fairs, you have to provide a food bank. That is not our purview. I would imagine the voucher system probably has some accountability. There's other mechanisms to work within the affordable housing framework. We do not have that authority. My question to the applicant was just, if these are things that you are committed to do, a good statement of trust to the neighborhood is to say, we will commit to do those things. And that is why my question was purely elective. It was not, I don't as a commissioner feel like I don't have the purview to put that condition on the project. So it was, and I don't know if Ms. King would.
Yes, that is correct.
I saw a lot of head nodding from the,
Yes.
I usually feel good when it's
Yes.
this and not that. So yeah, I just kept going. But so it was merely an invitation for transparency, for accountability, for metrics that start to build the trust bridge between the neighborhood and the Blanco. Because there are indications tonight that were very different than a year ago, that maybe the foundational stones are starting to be built on a bridge. I don't think the bridge is built. I don't think that anyone is holding hands and singing Kumbaya in a circle, but I think, I start to see that things have been made to bring that project together. So my comments were purely an opportunity to invite you to provide accountability for those services. I think So that was just, I do not have the authority to condition you for those things, and Ms. King is glad that I didn't recommend that we do. And so with that, I mean, I think to members of the public, neighbors that came, I would make sure that you read the conditions of what the Blanco is being held accountable. They do exceed the conditions that are our standard boilerplate, property line setback, curb and gutter. They get into management hours, they get into timeliness of requests, they get into enforcement when graffiti, trash, elements of the Blanco maybe fall into disrepair. So there are accountability mechanisms in place in this conditional use permit. And because that is the purview of what we look at as a commission, I think that this model of providing housing to the most vulnerable, speaking to, is it Ms. Vasquez? Was it? Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry. The speaker in support of the housing, or public comments on the housing. I think it was identified that very low income housing is where we as a city could do much better than we have. And so looking at models, finding partnerships that start to build trust with where they're placed, to me is definitely a move that we as a city should be moving. And so the goal tonight is to really, through the recommendation of the council of various departments in our city, I think the need for accountability through the use of a conditional use permit to build that trust. I would be, I think Commissioner Coleman, you made the initial motion, but I would also gladly second the motion, unless actually a commissioner would like to second the motion.
Before that.
He had a slide he wanted us to look at.
Is there a slide?
Well, the slide is just on conditions, if you were looking to add conditions. And I'm just going to forward to that real quick. And while you read this, I did have the opportunity to speak with the fire department. Regrettably, they could not be here tonight. But they did note that sprinklers were installed in this building, and they were finalized by the fire department. And they were installed in such a manner that does allow these small kitchenettes in each room. They also applied for fire alarms and water flow monitoring. Those plans were approved by the fire department in 2022, but there has been no call out for an inspection. So I would request that we add a condition, which would be condition 3C4, which states within 30 days of project approval, the project proponent shall request a final inspection for the fire alarms and water flow monitoring. And that is out of abundance of safety for the residents.
When you say safety and fire department, I feel, again, so would we just invite Commissioner Coleman to revise his motion? Does that work, Ms. King, or should we?
So the motion, and I can come back to this, the motion would be to adopt resolution and suggested findings approving conditional use permit number 230642 with the listed conditions of approval as modified, and that would be the inclusion of condition 3C4.
Can we go back to that last slide that you had? Because you talk about possible conditions include restrictions on hours of operation, providing on-site security. I thought that was part of the conditional use permit. As maybe it was talked about in the.
So I'm sorry, your question is?
Well, you're saying that it could be a possible addition, but I thought that were included in the conditional use permit that we were
So what you're seeing here is just a generalized, working with the city attorney's office, just a generalized aspect when you're discussing conditions of approval that could be applied to a project.
So, but our conditional use permit does include restrictions on hours of operation and security requirements, or does it not?
This does not include a security requirement, no.
Okay.
Commissioner Coleman, would you like to provide thoughts and comments?
I see a lot of people want to jump in here, so maybe we should have some more dialogue before we make a motion here.
I have nowhere to be. Please, Commissioner Coleman, please proceed.
I was suggesting that we have more dialogue.
I physically raised my hand,
Yeah.
so yeah.
We have technology. Commissioner Strickland.
I just want a little bit of dialogue on it. Do we like this project approval because it supports low-income and vulnerable persons? Do we like it because of the operational statement? Is that what our approval would be based on? So if we made a motion to approve, it's because it provides to the vulnerable. It's because it does supportive services through Cap K, through Garden Pathways. Is that?
No, it would be because you find that it meets the findings under our Muni code.
That it's a desirable. Can we go back to that slide?
Yes.
There's
Go back
two.
to
There's
slide
two
7,
findings.
slide 4.
Yep.
Right.
Those are the two things right there.
Right, and I guess I was asking the commission if you got this same type of effort, if you got an application where they were already renting above market apartments, right, and it was just an out of town or out of state developer already doing that, would we approve it tonight based on that? If so, then that's fine. I'm just asking, is there an element to this that because of the services they are purporting to provide long term, does that make it more amenable to approve tonight?
If you don't mind. I think this might be a question for the city attorney. As planning commissioners, our role is obviously to be here to listen to the public, but when it comes to our decision, are we allowed to have emotions that play into that, or does it have to be strictly off of what's put before us?
Well, I mean, you definitely are taking into consideration the totality of the circumstances, but you still have to make the findings based on what the Muni Code requires. So is a proposed use deemed essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare? And is it in harmony with the elements of objectives of the general plan?
Thank you. I think to respond to Commissioner Strickland, that was part of my question about the good neighbor policy, because technically it's not part of the conditional use. So from my perspective, we are looking at an application independent of a good neighbor policy because there's nothing holding them to the good neighbor policy. Or, I'm sorry.
The good neighbor policy is part.
My apologies. The operational statement is not anywhere translated into the CUP. So that, from my perspective, and is basically we are making a determination independent of that operational statement because there is nothing guaranteeing or codifying that this will be how they continue to operate. Does that help? Yeah.
And I think I got a little confused with the conditions, and I'm sorry to drag on this, but so security can't be something that we have in the conditions? That can't be something that's required?
It can be.
It can be?
Yes.
It's not, we have to
But
add
it's
a
not
condition here.
currently.
It's not in, that's
Okay.
what I was trying to do.
And can we, just to clarify, I know this came up at the last meeting, the current hours of operation of security on site?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Whoever is the best representative from the Blanco. Thank you.
Thank you again for asking the question. It's important information for people to know. I would like to make a distinction of physical security versus security services.
And sir, I would just want to clarify that the hearing already closed, so just if you can just answer the question that they're asking you.
Could you repeat the question?
Could you clarify the hours of on-site security and what security services exist on an on-call basis?
Yes. From on-site security, there are security guards present, armed security guards present from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. 7 days a week. There is also on-call security services provided from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. where we work in concert with the property management company to assist anything that they may need during that time. So a total of 19 hours a day.
And lastly, can you confirm that there is a property manager on site during the hours of 8 to 5, 7 days a week or 5 days a week?
5 days a week.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Strickland, I see a request.
I'm never saying I yield the floor again because I'm taking it.
Sorry, just keep going. Yeah.
Just to confirm, in the discussion on the August 3rd Planning Commission meeting, that's the security now, and this may be for the applicant.
That was the security then also, sir. It was not well articulated then because they asked the time that a security guard was present, if I
Sure,
remember
sorry, I'm
correctly.
asking a question. Sorry, let me ask the question first. At the time of that meeting, the applicant had stated that that was not long-term feasible. There wasn't budget to long-term have security on site, things like that. So I want to make sure that we're not confused between what they're doing today and what they're doing permanently. So is that a condition of long-term that there'll be 8 to 6 p.m. security? I said it backward. I'm not that smart. 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. security. Is that the long-term plan, or is that just now?
It is currently the case. We hope that we can bring the place to a point where we would not require that as it is. The place is improving. As you've heard, since the beginning of 2024, the police said that there were only 4 calls for this property. So hopefully we will not need to do that. This is extremely taxing. So it is not something that we can sustain forever and ever. We wouldn't love it more than anything else, but it's not something that we'll be able to sustain.
Sure. Thank you.
And, sorry?
I want to make sure if I give them the chance to talk, is that a problem?
Well, the hearing already closed, so
Right.
we really are limited to just
Question.
And it answered the
questions.
question I asked.
Yeah, it's to answer the question that you asked about the long-term versus...
Okay, yes.
Okay, we are also working with some avenues with non-profit grants in order to somehow help with the security, so there will be security, and if that will be the case, then that will be the long term.
Thank you.
So if I could jump in here, is there a way that we can structure a condition here that, that, you know, requires security without defining what that is, so that the city can monitor that and, you know, work with the developer as time goes on? I don't know how to, I don't want to condition them to have, you know, 4 armed guards for however long. I guess I didn't want to get into that, because I understand the developer's concern about the ongoing costs over time. But is there a way that we can have a security condition in there that gives the city some, you know, way to go back to the developer and say, hey, you're not meeting your obligation?
Commissioner Coleman, the condition will have to be specific enough that we can actually enforce.
You can say no, it's okay.
That is correct.
We do right now have a condition that says a property manager shall be on site between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. But again, that was part of their good neighbor policy, which is why it was incorporated in policies we figured could be conditions of approval. And almost like Vice Chair Cater said, I mean, a statement is just a statement, not necessarily enforceable.
Is there a representative from BPD in the audience by chance? Probably not, right? Other than, you ready to, I won't, so I was just curious about, again, building trust, building transparency, you know, a metric to establish the need, because I hear resounding that some of the issues that may be orbiting around the Blanco are not residents, but they are people visiting residents. And to me, the presence of an overnight security is very effective to that end, because they are monitoring who is coming and going from the site independent of residents that live there. And so, I mean, it's no longer on the top 10. There was like a flashy term BPD dropped last time, like top 10 event. But I'd just be curious if there's a mechanism for monitoring, instances, or, you know, if there's some metric that can be used to say.
I think that some of the reasons the neighbors are more agreeable and they're not in total agreement, but they're more agreeable now, is that things have improved there. And that was largely because they've had security there. And so without including the security as a condition, then there's no guarantee that, come tomorrow, he doesn't lay off all the security people. And so I don't know how to, have a condition that gives them a little bit of wiggle room, but requires them to continue some kind of security.
I mean, it may take a minute to craft a condition, but, and I'll just throw this out there for your deliberation, is that if applicants can pull the number of police calls to the site monthly, and if that drops below a certain threshold that your commission sets, maybe you can say no security, or security is optional. But again, I don't have what that threshold would be. I'm assuming that a member of the public could get the number of calls out easily, but that is something that cannot be conditioned to staff to obtain those calls monthly for monitoring.
Can I ask, so in a condition of approval, if a condition is ever challenged by an applicant in the future, is there a process that doesn't involve coming through a public hearing again?
In the future, you're saying, so not necessarily right now. So right now, the remedy would be to appeal to City Council. In the future, although we do not have a modification of a zoning or a modification of a conditional use permit, we do not have that in our zoning ordinance right now. But what they could do is potentially come back with like an expansion of a legal nonconforming use, because if this conditional use permit is approved in another couple months, it will not be an option to apply for a conditional use permit. So then this would be a legal nonconforming use. They could potentially come back for an expansion of a legal nonconforming use to amend conditions at that time.
Okay.
But basically a new conditional use permit, but we just call it an expansion of a legal nonconforming use.
Because I know there's language in other conditional uses I've seen where it's sort of re-examined at an interval, maybe a year, 6 months, to determine and because to me, I think the security does feel like it's been a benefit to the neighborhood, to the project, and but then understanding that the hesitancy for conditions that will live on forever, but just finding the right metric and who is the right person to say, we agree this site is no longer, that this condition can be.
We do have an option, although it kind of imposes more work on staff for compliance review of a condition of approval, meaning that we would report back to the Planning Commission at a date that your commission sets with an update towards compliance with those conditions or anything other than you may want at that time to evaluate that conditional use permit. And usually that's done as a report, not necessarily a public hearing. It's a public hearing, but it's not notified to the public that we're reporting back.
So it would not be posted for residents to be, is there, because to me, there
could be, we could do it through the public hearing process and put it on the public hearing agenda. But again, that is at city cost, just so you know that you would be imposing a cost on the city.
Well, I didn't suggest the condition, so I will let Commissioner Coleman get back into the conversation.
All right, let's try to move this thing along. So I would like to make can you put up what you thought was the original approval? Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we approve the resolution defining approval conditional use permit and the listed conditions of approval with a added condition that the added condition that there be some security, I can't think of another way to say it, or some security available on a 24-hour basis. And whether that's just their regular staff person or whether it's armed security, I don't think I want to get into that. But that they need to make some effort to provide security and accountability on a 24-hour basis.
That is a little subjective. Available could mean just on call, and we're fine with that.
Can you help me be more specific, more objective?
Commissioner Coleman, if you say available, it makes it sound like they're there, like 24/7. If you say on call, it means that they only get called if they're needed. So which one are you leaning towards?
I am leaning towards them being there.
Okay.
That we need to have somebody. Now, let me ask you a question, because this is, I don't remember the one we approved in town here, whether we conditioned that in such a way.
I'm not familiar of conditioning a conditional use permit to require security.
Yeah, I'm loath to require, the extra cost and impose that on the developer, but I struggle because the reason we're here tonight and the conditions are improved there is because that security has been offered, has been available during this period of time. So I think I'm going to propose that we have a condition that requires them to have a security presence 24 hours a day.
Would you be acceptable to the security that they have now based on their hours for a period of 6 months, and then we return in 6 months, again with a report just to see how it goes, and then
yes,
and then my initial thought is to have the security required for 6 months, and we can report back. And if you decide that you want to continue that, then we would have to set that for a public hearing if we're going to modify conditions at that point in time. But if we're just going to report back, then we can just report back as under reports where it's not.
Yeah, I think personally I would be agreeable to that. If we see that, the crime rate in that area has dropped and we haven't had a lot of calls at that property or in the general vicinity, I would be all for dropping it, because I really don't want to put a big financial burden on the developer. I think I appreciate that he's brought this project, to us, that we have an opportunity to provide this kind of housing. So, can you structure that in such a way that it doesn't put too much more of a burden on it, but we'll be looking at this again in 6 months? Is that going to be like in 6 months we'll say, okay, another 6 months, or are we going to make some resolution at that time to change that, or what do you imagine that being?
I imagine that being, if you want to require it for 6 months, so the on-site security would be required for 6 months. We would then report back, but at 6 months, the applicant could cease their security. And if you wanted to extend that, we would have to reset that for a public hearing to modify conditions or add conditions. So initially, it would be for a period of 6 months. We would report back, and then you could determine if you want to continue security after that. But again, if you're going to continue security, it would require a public hearing.
Can I ask a question of the applicants? Just the anticipated timeline to, your project has been in limbo for a period of time now. If tonight's conditional use is approved, what's the anticipated timeline to get the Blanco up and running as your team envisions it?
Thank you. It's our intent to activate this conditional use permit as soon as possible. We've already produced as-built plans and know how to handle the change of use. So as soon as this is finalized, that's going to be one of our first steps.
So would you anticipate like a 6-month turnaround or a 1-year turnaround?
It would be within 6 months.
Okay. My thought is, Commissioner Coleman, you're making the motion because it's, but my thought is, thank you, that was my question, yeah. Is the security has provided what I think is kind of starting to connect neighborhood concerns with the project. And we're still in this transition period, and we'll still be in a transition period till the project is able to complete itself, because it hasn't been able to complete itself. And so to me, I would suggest for consideration that security as currently provided extends itself into kind of, let's call it 6 months after the project opens as planned. And then the Blanco has an opportunity to show itself as it will be as a neighbor and a completed project. To me, that provides an opportunity to kind of get through this transition period. This team can act as they put their best effort forward to show how they intend to be a good neighbor, and that would be, to me, a good time to make a determination.
I think I agree with that. So can you, Mr. Johnson, summarize that condition, and is that objective enough for you?
I'm looking right now. If you could give me your point one more time. So you're looking for on-site security 24 hours a day?
We're looking for on-site security. Well,
or as current?
As it currently is. That's the way it's been presented to us tonight. And I think that it was a staff person from 8 to 6, and then a staff person from 8 in the morning till 5 p.m. and then there's armed security from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Right? Is that correct, Mr. Levin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as it is been presented tonight, until 6 months after the project is fully completed, is that? So that's after everything is done, all the conditions have been met. Yeah. Yeah, that would be my motion. Is that adequate to the city attorney?
So
Yes.
let me read it, and we'll make sure
Thank
that the city attorney is fine and this covers what you're looking for. So we would have a condition that says the project proponent shall provide on-site security from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. for a period of 6 months after final certificate of occupancy, which certificate of occupancy wouldn't be issued until all the conditions are complied with. And then we would have another condition that would say this item shall be brought back to the regular scheduled planning commission meeting. I'm sorry, did we want to bring this back for a report, or were we just satisfied with the 6 months after?
I think we'd want to be able to hear it again. And we're trying to think about, I'm trying to think about, if we're not, the planning commissioner 6 months from when that project finishes, that it makes some sense to them. So it would need to come back in some form that you could report on, where we started, where we are, and how it's going.
And so you would like that report, again, I will say 6 months after the final certificate of occupancy?
Yes, yeah. So that could
Okay,
be,
understand.
that could be 18 months from now. It could be
So
3
then
years from now if it takes them that long to get everything done.
we'll have another condition that says this item shall be brought back to the regular scheduled planning commission meeting 6 months after final certificate of occupancy or as soon thereafter as a staff communication item. If compliance with the conditions of approval are in dispute, the matter could subsequently be scheduled for a planning commission review on the regular agenda, at which time the planning commission may take whatever action related to the project, if any, it deems warranted, including adoption of new or modified or modification of existing conditions of approval or initiate revocation of project approval. Just noting that if that does occur, that is a potential cost that the city will do, because we will have to notify the neighborhood with signs on site.
One question I would have is, I think, to the best of what's able, that we are reviewing this one condition and the expiration of the condition, not reopening for, to me, that last language was a little bit intimidating. Like, I don't think that we want to present the opportunity that we're going to try to recondition the project.
Okay. So we'll just say this item shall be brought back to the regular scheduled Planning Commission meeting 6 months after final certificate of occupancy or soon thereafter as a staff communication item.
What's that?
Yeah, I think that's what I think that's as good as we can ask for. You know, the developer left the room, but I'll say to the property management person that it's really not our intention to put any undue financial burden on the developer. But I go back to that conditions have improved so much there in the last year because of that security. And this is not the time to stop it. So that would be my motion as Mr. Johnson prepared it. Does everybody understand the motion?
We do have a request to speak from Commissioner Strickland.
I did have a question on the map set. If we approve it on this motion, is it on the map set they submitted for certificate of completion? Because the map set still shows the kitchenette, the architect saying that's not a thing. What do we approve? Which map set are we approving on?
Mr. Johnson, can you clarify the plans submitted tonight? Should the plans deviate through the process? What constitutes a, because the project, I think Mr. Frank spoke to it, the project is not ready to go. There are other steps in the process. So can you clarify what we're looking at tonight and what the applicant would be held to? I think that's Mr. Strickland, or Commissioner, yeah.
Generally speaking, conditional use permits are brought forward with plans that are how to be constructed. If you want to allow some leeway for modifications to those floor plans, that would be at your discretion or a discretion you would allow me to make.
And I would propose that we allow the planning director to have discretion on that. We understand, I think, in theory, what we're trying to achieve there. And if it's just a matter of, you know, changing the configurations of the rooms, so I think that's well within the knowledge base that the director brings to the table. So
Yeah.
I think he should have the discretion. It shouldn't have to come back to us. I think that we have plenty of conditions in here to be sure that we're getting the kind of housing that we want. And whether it has, you know, this kind of refrigerator or that kind of stove, I think that's something that the director should have some authority on.
Yep. And then the sprinklers, if you want to add that to the
Aren't the
motion.
sprinklers part of the condition?
Yes, that was included. So we'll have 3 conditions that we're adding.
Okay.
Three.
Can we re-review those?
See, let's review all the conditions then.
I will. So we'll have the on-site security. We'll have the report back. And then we will have, for the fire suppression, sprinklers, fire alarm, and water flow.
Okay, so that's my motion. I think that's as good as it's going to get tonight, and we have 2 more items to do yet. So, that would be my motion, and I would look for somebody to second that.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, commissioners, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with Chair Bashir Tosh and Commissioners Kaur and Neal absent.
Thank you. May I recommend that we take a 10-minute breather? Just,
Yes, it's 7:50.
yes, thank you. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock. Thank you. I think if we could all take our seats. The time is now 8:01, and we're going to move to reopen the agenda with item 6B. Mr. Johnson, would you please provide us your staff report? And if I could ask the neighbors that are talking in the back, if you could make your way into the lobby. Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
So thank you. We were pleased to have our Development Services Director, Christopher Boyle, present this item.
Thank you, Planning Director Johnson. It's actually a pleasure to be here at 8:01. Thought I might be a little earlier. I want to take the opportunity to thank all of the citizens who are still here. That shows true commitment to our housing efforts moving forward. Without further ado, the second item on tonight's public hearing agenda is six-cycle housing element, regional housing needs assessment, vacant sites rezoning. That's a mouthful. Why are we here? To provide the required inventory of housing sites appropriately zoned to comply with a regional housing needs assessment for the six-cycle housing element. The six-cycle housing element and the RHNA process is one that is born out of Sacramento. Sacramento releases a county-wide number, target number for the county overall. Ultimately, the current Council of Governments is responsible to take that number and distribute it across the various municipalities within the county, in this case, Kern County. Our 2023 to 2031 RHNA allocations by income category, per that Kern COG report, asks the city or directs the city to provide for 37,461 units. And those units are broken across 4 income categories. Essentially, the lower income categories, the city is asked to create 18,211 units, and for higher income, 19,250 units. When you look at that as an overall percentage of the county within the county's RHNA, the city's asked to create 76% or provide 76% of the county's overall RHNA totals for low and very low income. And for our moderate and above moderate, the city is tasked with providing for 57% of all market rate housing. You look at that as a distribution across the board, you'll see that it's about 50-50, 51 to 49%, very low or low income being 49% of that total, and moderate and above moderate being 51% of that total. If you look at other municipalities, I think the city is definitely challenged and is carrying quite the load, 65% of the county overall. And the table there, which looks at all the cities, I'm not picking on anyone, but for county totals, it's 73% market rate and 27% for low and very low. There are other municipalities within Kern County that have been blessed similarly, even less than 27% of their overall RHNA being assigned to them. So when we look at a rezoning, the idea is to translate the RHNA into zoning. And so when you look at these various categories for very low income, the city has created an R5 and an R6 and an MX2 zone because we haven't really had a zoning designation that would require no less than 30 dwelling units an acre. But in order for land to be qualified as very low income, per the HCD standards, it needs to be at least 30 dwelling units an acre or more. Hence, for R5, that's 30 dwelling units to 50, and for R6, 50 and above. Our MX2 requires a mixed-use component that comes in at 30 dwelling units or more an acre. For the low income, that aligns with our MX1 and our R4, where there must be at least 20 dwelling units an acre to qualify as a low-income property within our vacant sites inventory. Similarly, for our market rate, you could say that R2 and R3 are your moderate income properties, and that can fluctuate a little bit depending on the overall density of those projects. And your R1 and RS are your typically moderate market rate properties. So in looking at your vacant sites inventory rezone, it starts with arena, but the arena is translated through zoning. Now, the city, in our fifth cycle, provided something like 261% of RENA because we essentially added every vacant parcel in the city. And so the city's ability to carry over some of those parcels at this point, 8 years after construction, 8 years through construction in our fifth cycle, you can see that these properties here, they're carryover vacant sites that are appropriately zoned to meet the needs of those varying income categories. Noting that we didn't have an R4 that provided for that minimum density, and we didn't have an R5 there either as well. So if you take those parcels do not require any rezoning whatsoever. They're carried over into our vacant sites inventory. There are also new proposed rezone sites, and the city's gone through some degree of effort in looking to collaborate with our property owners within the city. I, as a rule to staff, would never include a parcel that didn't have owner desire to be in the vacant sites inventory. So it's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into crafting this particular list. So that's all of the rezone properties that are proposed. How do we do that? Well, we did that through a series of outreach letters. No less than 4 communications have gone to every single parcel that was proposed to be on our list. Started back in January, I think the 16th. I'm not wearing my glasses, nor would they do me any good at this point in juncture. January 26th, the follow-up letter that included a frequently asked questions and a description of the various zoning designations, and included a consent to rezone form in it as well. An additional follow-up letter in February and early February, and then our last communication. Some people did return that consent to annexation form. We appreciated that. And the other graphic there shows the descriptions of the various zones that a prospective rezone property owner could discern what that meant to his property, his or her property, as they were being considered for a rezone. Now, not everybody desired to be in the vacant sites inventory. And so parcels removed, there were 35 parcels removed that in total lost 145.57 acres with a projected unit loss, remembering that the RENA must provide 37,461 units, of about 2,945 parcels. I would also remind you too that you're not looking at the annexations that you recently pre-zoned, because they're pre-zoned, but they're not in the city yet. Our work is done. LAFCO would have to approve those annexations, and those are looking to be scheduled for a LAFCO hearing in the near future. But those are also, those pre-zoned parcels, in many cases, are also included within the vacant sites inventory. I want to take a moment to thank the Planning Division staff for their hard work on this matter. Mr. Fernandez, I think his phone never stopped ringing for the last month or so as he answered questions to concerned citizens. Mr. Nino, the advanced planning principal planner who guided this process, as well as Mr. Luis Ramirez, who has been instrumental in looking at our next hearing item, the report on our APR. Great efforts, and I just want to lift them up. Oh, and I should also introduce Mr. Bell as well, who's been instrumental in that work. I go on and thank Anna too, but everybody knows you have to thank Anna. So, back to seriousness. What does that mean to us? What you're looking at tonight is 211 parcels, which encompass 1,012.91 acres of land, with the potential to provide for 18,881 units towards that 37,000 plus goal. Is it all of those properties we need? No, we would have hoped that every parcel would have embraced the idea. That's not the case. Staff's already working on a second rezone that will come back to you in order to fully satisfy the 37,461 and to provide the desired buffer that HCD requests, which would be somewhere between 15 and 25%. That's our target. When we went into this effort, we had about an 18% buffer. I think that buffer's been exhausted by the parcels that have been removed. But we'd like to think that everyone in audience tonight, noting they've had outreach, are there in support of the rezones that are before you today. So 211 parcels, 1,012.91 acres, 1,881 potential units. If you put the existing inventory along with the proposed rezones, the map starts to fill out. Next time we see each other, as long as our annexations go smoothly, you'll see the annexation pieces come together as well. And we'll be looking at that last piece, trying to fill in that gap and build our reserve back up. That said, did I ever say that B is for brevity? That said, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving the change in zoning classifications from the various zones noted herein and rezone those to the MX1, MX2, R2, R3, R4, R4 HD for Hillside, and R5 or more restrictive classifications, and recommend same to the City Council. That completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. The public hearing on this item is now open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Bakersfield Planning Commission, staff, and audience. My name is Max Becerra. I'm principal of Pacificus 4 Company and also principal in the Mora Partners. I've been a planner for over 40 years in Kern County. I've also had the pleasure and the honor to serve as the chairman of the Kern County Housing Authority for the last 30 years. You know, as I continue to plan and be a part of the growth and progress of Kern County and the city of Bakersfield, it's so apparent that while the state is you know, requiring so many units to be placed here in the city of Bakersfield, we need to follow good planning practices and locate higher densities, housing along our major corridors, make sure that they have access to parks as well as educational facilities. I've had the ability to work with planning staff on some of the projects that and some of the sites that we control along major corridors, and I think staff has done an outstanding job in trying to cite the best location for these higher density parcels for housing and even the MX2 and MX1 areas, so that transit can utilize these areas, and it makes good sense. So at least from my perspective, I think that I really feel that your planning staff has done a great job, and I too would like to advocate that your commission take a look at the staff's report and the areas where they have requested that we make some changes in the zoning classifications. Then please approve this staff report by staff. That would be my my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening, staff and Commissioner. Vice Chair. My name is Eric Mora. I'm the principal of the Mora Partners. I'm partners with Mr. Max Becerra. I've been in real estate sales for the last 18 years and a partner with Mr. Becerra for the last 4. Being involved in the city's growth, planning, developing projects both in, residential, multifamily, and commercial. So on behalf of a few of my clients that received a few of these letters from staff, they couldn't make it tonight, and if they were here, they probably would have left a little earlier. They all shared that they were very excited to see that the city was interested in reevaluating the zone of their properties. Just because of the lack of interest in their current properties now, they felt that the MX zone would bring value to their site and would bring possible new development into these neighborhoods. So tonight, I'm here to support Mr. Bull's proposition here to rezone these zone changes to the MX zoning and also the higher density zones. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? Seeing no additional speakers in favor, I will now invite any members of the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the project. If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Jess Frederick. I'm with WZI. I also represent the Parking Lot 6 Association. So I'll be brief. First of all, this is a bit of a challenge, forgive me. First of all, we don't want to derail the good work that's been done just to fix otherwise avoidable process flaws. So I'm hoping we can resolve this issue and put everything back on track as far as what we perceive has proceeded as of the most recent action. Just in general, our first inkling regarding this rezoning activity came by the perfunctory notice concerning the proposed change in zoning to alter our common parking lot from parking to mixed use. And as we pointed out to the staff, we have certain constraints as to what we can do with our parking lot in our founding documents. So we sought advice from business partners and commercial development contacts, only to find that such an action on our parking lot could actually cause a devaluation of our commercial property and may actually pull a trigger on covenants on loan documents. So we're very sensitive to that, and I would hope that that would always be a consideration. And we asked that our parking lot be removed from consideration, and thankfully the staff was very gracious. They did it, and I'd like to extend my thanks to all for that. The use of high-density residential is our issue at hand, not so much because of the way it's been shown in the map, but because during the course of the recent Planning Commission meeting, there was a statement made regarding zoning all commercial into a mixed-use environment, and it just threw up a red flag as we were scrambling to try and wrap our head around the entire matter, and suddenly this started looking like it was going to be an overlay done citywide, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. And I think to some degree, having seen the previous proceeding, it certainly is within the conditional use process as an instrument to convert otherwise commercial property into a mixed-use environment with proper mitigations. That's what the conditions are for. So, as I said, we've been scrambling and we've sought a lot of advice, and then we were reading through the Planning Commission proceedings and found this reference to just putting everything under a commercial overlay, and that really caused some concern. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through my notes. I've already submitted written comments on behalf of the Parking Lot Association. You should have received them. I think we submitted them yesterday. So rather than waste a lot of everybody's time here this evening, we all want to go home sometime. We're going to ask respectfully, one, for the clarification. I think that the clarification of the proposed rezoning as it relates to the commercial potential overlay, or if it's not even an issue, so be it. I've seen the map, and I'm assuming that all of the Planning Commission actions are really, and the City Council actions are related directly to those properties, those APN numbers that are identified on the maps. But we are still concerned in terms of Westchester. As I started looking through this, Westchester is a particularly exposed community in all of this planning. And I would hope that they get certain consideration with regard to environmental justice issues themselves, because as high-speed rail starts to build out, and soon it will be there, coupled with this transient high-density housing, it could be very, very unfortunate for the people there, and I think that they deserve some consideration. And aside from my own commercial interests, and I'm here on behalf of my company, the Parking Lot Association, and the other Parking Lot Association, who also asked me to sort of encourage me to step right into this, is that you give some consideration to the Westchester community. We respectfully ask for the clarifications for the proposed zoning and a little more time to address the community impacts. I know you guys are under the gun, and I appreciate it, but it's sort of, when it's with Bakersfield and you tell us that it's because Sacramento tells us to do something, they're not exactly the best source of instruction as to how to perform. So our formal comments have been submitted in writing, and we respectfully reserve the right to expand our formal comments. This is going to be a pro forma statement as additional information concerning the action under CEQA becomes available, and we continue to first exhaust our administrative remedy. And hopefully, that'll be the end of it in the clarifications. And thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing no additional speakers in opposition, are there any Planning Commissioner questions for staff or members of the public? Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cater. I appreciate it. I'm looking for, this is for staff, I'm looking for the letter that the Parking Lot Association says that they, is that in the staff report?
It was in a memorandum that was prepared today. There was 2 memorandums provided.
I see the Zimmer and Melton one. Is that the one?
Yes, that is the one.
Okay, all right, okay. So can you clarify that we've taken their lot out of this zoning change?
That lot was proposed for MX2, I believe, and it was removed, yes.
Okay. And then the other matter that he's asking for is clarification on how we zone MX1.
The MX1 zone provides for residential by right. It also provides for the complete use schedule of the C1 zone. So all applicable, the use schedule for the C1 zone is also applied to the MX1, requires a 20 to 30 dwelling units per acre density if someone entertained going with mixed use.
There's nothing that prevents them from using it.
Nothing whatsoever.
Okay, so goes back to the root of the, why we're here and the RENA numbers that we're chasing. Can you talk a little bit about how the state, if you know, how they come up with that Kern County should build, or Bakersfield should build 37,000 lots in the next few years? Is there a method to that, or is it, a roulette wheel in the lobby of the assembly office, or how is that?
How do I wish to reply? HCD provides to COG a base number with which each county must meet that number of dwelling units. COG then provides for a formula. That formula ultimately must be approved by HCD. The graphic I put up was the HCD letter as well as the RENA formulation that was prepared by Kern COG. It's no secret that there is a housing shortage in the state of California, and HCD is charged with being responsive to that shortage, and those numbers are distributed to each of the individual counties in the state, and then subsequently the various councils of government then distribute them to the various municipalities and unincorporated areas of their respective regions. And that's how this process works. Then that number is released by COG, and each of those municipalities is tasked with preparing a vacant sites inventory as part of their housing element, which meets or typically exceeds the number of units that are assigned to it. Is Bakersfield asked to carry a lion's share, especially of affordable housing, in this sixth cycle? I would say absolutely yes. I think the numbers demonstrate that. By the same token, there's as much of a need for market rate housing. I've mentioned in the past that I think the last time I was with you, that we built 1,234 single-family residential homes last year, and we will need to average 2,406 over the next 8 years. So, whereas there's a major focus on a higher density product, the zoning ordinance that you've adopted and forwarded to the City Council, and the preponderance of that, which was approved last night, it doesn't look to focus on providing for higher densities of housing. It looks to provide for a broad swath of opportunities to build residential at multiple differing densities. Some of those densities are very purposeful in that the state requires that 20 to 30 and that 30 and above designation to meet the low and very low. And so city's ordinance is very purposeful in meeting that guideline. So, but all in all, the city's tasked with building a lot of housing, and we're not necessarily focused on a density versus higher density versus lower density. We're focused on producing housing. That's why we also introduced the mixed use zones to provide for by right opportunities and streamlined processes per the desires of HCD, and quite frankly, per the desires of our development community. Nothing like by right streamlined processes to help facilitate greater development within the city, something the development community has asked for a long, long time. And so consequently, this ordinance looks to not only provide for wide swath of housing opportunities, but it also looks to provide for ample opportunities for the development community to be responsive to the need to build 37,461 units. For me, it's not productive for me to say these are impossible numbers. What's productive for me is to say, I'm going to find a way for the development community to build it, noting that the city doesn't build a single unit. And that ordinance was purposeful in its intent to provide for those opportunities. And I want to thank the property owners who embraced the idea of providing a wider range of densities within the city's 151 square miles. I champion them embracing these revised zones and willingly coming into the vacant sites inventory. At the same time, I would note that not one single property owner who doesn't wish to be in it is incorporated into this rezone, not one iota. I'll also add there was a note that we need more time. I've been at this since 2022, okay? As I noted last night in City Council, we've been without a housing element now for 60 days, essentially decertified. And I think the reason why we haven't been challenged by HCD with a letter advising us of that fact is because we are working hard to get a certified housing element to them. And to take pauses is not conducive to getting this process across the finish line without any penalty from HCD. If you're watching, I want to thank you for your patience as we worked hard to bring to you a housing element that provides for housing of all types, in all areas of the city, for all income groups. Thank you for your patience. If you have any other questions, I know I could elaborate.
Well, Ms. Neal is not here tonight, and I know that the low income and the very low income is very dear to her, and it's important to all of us, I think. And so the question becomes, we're going to add another 18,000 lots in this rezone deal, and there's no guarantee that any of those are going to get built out within the time. So what can we do? What is planned for us to do? Maybe you got a couple of developers back there. What is it going to take to get some of that stuff built?
You know, as I was listening to Mr. Becerra, I made a mistake in this presentation, or even in the APR presentation that will follow, because the Mora partners are already taking advantage of this zoning ordinance, and will be presenting to staff density of an R4 nature, 40 acres of it. We have other lots we have other small lots, single family, that would qualify for R2, that's in final map stage. The development community be responsive because the city now doesn't require PUDs and zoning mods and all those things that used to be required to build at a higher density. And I'm pleased to say that at least some of the development community sees an opportunity to provide for a wide range of housing to the residents of the city of Bakersfield, so that every person can entertain home ownership and build personal wealth. And that's something that's dear to my heart as well. So I think you might be surprised at the resilience of the development community as it's responsive to the zoning ordinance that you approved and forwarded a recommendation of approval to council, who took action last night.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. We look forward to seeing some more housing being built. So
the next time I come and see you, I'd like to think I'll be bringing live applications to you, just to give you a taste of what's to come.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman, or Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Strickland.
Sorry, if I mentioned parking, are you just going to walk out? Have you heard all you want about parking this week?
No, I've heard wonderful constructive comments as it relates to the city's proposal to remove parking regulations, and I'm excited to bring a workshop to the city council. You may or may not know that council took an action to remove that parking component from the ordinance, but moved the remainder of the ordinance forward, noting our need to bring a certifiable housing element to HCD. And I'm anxious to continue that dialogue with decision makers moving forward.
I meant because I don't think we've ever talked where I didn't bring up parking. I had a question, and it's on here somewhere.
Are you trying to press my buttons, Commissioner Strickland?
I didn't realize it was that serious.
I left my boxing gloves back at my office. True story.
It's in here somewhere, and I can't find the number. It was 112 acres that opted out and 792 acres that are in scope. Is that number right?
Let's get it absolutely right. There is 1,012, called 1,013 acres that are encompassed within 211 parcels that provide a potential of, and that's at the minimum density. That's typically what the realistic capacity of each parcel is in your vacant sites inventory as part of your housing element. So at the minimum density. And so that's 18,881 units, and we lost 35 parcels encompassing 145.57, including a parking lot.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just couldn't remember the numbers. I couldn't find it on my sheet, so thank you.
To put it into context, if you're looking at 2,945 lost units, that's essentially 100 acres of R5 zoning. It will be a tall challenge, but staff will continue to collaborate with property owners in the community, and we will get there.
Commissioner Strickland? I'm sorry.
I didn't yield, but I should have.
No worries. My question is actually for the speaker in opposition. You had a number of questions. Were they all answered during the period, or is there a question you'd like clarified? Yes, please. But please note this is a time for questions, so if you could just clarify any questions you have for staff.
The question mark.
Yeah.
The issue I have has more to do with whether or not MX or mixed use is compatible with commercial. It's whether or not the overlay was done without study or consideration, just as an accommodation to expedite some action where it affects 151 square miles of Bakersfield.
Sorry, this is only time for questions, so it's got to be very question.
Well, that is the question that I was asking. Is this an overlay of the entire commercial C1 and C2
and I will
zoning as a conversion? Question mark.
And I will thank you for clarifying that question, and I will turn to Mr. Boyle with
for clarification.
And then my understanding of the question is the
an
MX an overlay to the
applicable
entire
city?
Yes.
No, it is a freestand. Both the MX1 and the MX2 are freestanding zones, and to date, they're only been applied to property owners who so desire to engage in a mixed-use zone. The C1 zone and the C2 zone do not provide for residential, but their use schedules have been applied to the MX zones such that for individuals who would desire to have a mixed-use setting, they could rezone their properties into the MX zones, but it is not a citywide application.
So an MX zone, a commercial property would go through an MX process to become part of that zone, a rezone process to become part of that.
For C1 and C2, noting that we already have provisions for housing in our CB and our CC.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Did that answer? Thank you. I just want to make sure your questions are answered. I had just a couple of questions about methodology and how the map, like how sites were determined. So I don't know if staff or if Mr. Boyle, you're the best to.
I probably am the best to discuss anything associated with the vacant sites inventory, although my crack planning team led by the polished planning director, Paul Johnson, would probably stand up to me just as ably. So, to incorporate a parcel into the vacant sites inventory is not like it was in 2015. It can only, for high density properties, they can only be between 1/2 and 10 acres. They must be close to or reasonably foreseeable to have access to utility over the 8-year span of the of the housing element itself. They must provide for a minimum of the zoning of the densities that I provided for. So, and along with that, there's a more broader brush of requirements attached to state law as it relates to affirmatively furthering fair housing and no net loss and those other dynamics that have been introduced by the legislature over the last 7 years. So when you look at the zoning map, and especially those rezone areas, I cherish the zones, those parcels that have volunteered in all quadrants of the city. There isn't any one real highly selected area that is essentially being a focal point of placing housing in.
And I guess that is kind of more. I should have finished my question before I said housing, and then let you tell me. I appreciate all of it. My question is, and I'm trying to say the question without saying a thought, but the map we're seeing displays two strategies. Well, the map I'm seeing. One that clusters mixed-use sites in theory to activate a mixed-use neighborhood. Another that are kind of drops in a bucket, if you will, of traditional zoning and denser sites. Do you see the city maybe in the next round? Do you see one pattern versus the other emerging as the city moves forward and provides its density and housing?
I'm going to continue the strategies that we've employed because from my perspective, it's not good governance to simply apply a zone district to an individual's property without their consent.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at our outreach over time, that's been our primary approach. As it relates to the Cottonwood corridor, that's most obvious.
Mm-hmm.
That those property owners came to us with a desire, and there's a vision for the future of the South MLK Cottonwood corridor that includes a rejuvenation of that area and wrapped around the Del Oro High School and future commercial that's proposed at the intersection of Cottonwood and White. And so the city wants to partner with those property owners in providing the correct zoning for that vision to continue to move forward in a positive way. Yes, Vice Chair, we do have a vision for a mixed density neighborhoods. You might recall last year's annual progress report where we looked at Harlan Ranch, and I colored the map with all the different densities that were within that 400 acres, and there was no less than 8 different product types being represented. We see that as a viable approach to providing housing for all folks. In terms of filling in the blanks on this map, we're going to continue to look for properties who want to partner in all quadrants in order to make certain that we've done everything we can to affirmatively further fair housing throughout the community, and hopefully capitalize on opportunities to partner with developers and property owners in finishing the job of having a suitable vacant sites inventory.
And is is there any work being done in conjunction with affordable housing developers or affordable housing providers, if you will?
I would say this, that I do know that the affordable housing community is aware of our vacant sites inventory and has been in contact with certain property owners about the availability of their lands.
Mm-hmm.
Those are private property owner business decisions. I believe that at least in one instance, that there was a favorable outcome there where we might see additional affordable housing being brought to the community by one of our existing low-income builders.
And does the city have metrics to see how in use the vacant site inventory is? Like number of hits, number of connections? Is there any, because it exists for developers to, right, as it's a resource that was created at the beginning of the process?
In that it's not really finalized.
Okay.
It hasn't really been out on the street. We've had one brush where we've provided opportunities for comment to HCD. Then subsequently that's come back to us, and there's still a lot of work to be done. with the vacant sites inventory just in identifying the realistic capacities. Remember that we started this process with relying upon the general plan land use designations. So that included designations that would provide for as much as 72.6 units, but more often than not was built at 4 or 5 dwelling units an acre. That's one of the reasons why HCD said your zoning ordinance is a constraint to housing production.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need, now that this ordinance is one step away with a second read from memorializing these zone districts, our consultant will be tasked with going back into the vacant sites inventory, addressing the minimum maximum tables, and identifying the more suitable realistic capacity, and then running those totals. So and all of that is happening in the here and now and will be done before we get a certified housing element.
Thank you.
Just a bit of work.
A little bit.
Still to go.
Okay. Great. I don't see any additional commissioner questions, and so now's the time for rebuttal. I will note it appears that the speaker in opposition has left the hearing. And so I will, as we heard from the opposition, Ms. King.
So we would hear from those in favor
Favor,
first?
and then we'll, okay.
Yes.
So now's the time for rebuttal comments. Please remember this is a 5-minute total time for all speakers, so please make your comments succinct and provide an opportunity for everyone to speak. So with that, we will start with those. We last heard from those in opposition, so we will begin rebuttal with those in support and put 5 minutes on the clock. And so this time I will invite any speakers that would like to provide rebuttal comments in support. Ms. King, seeing no speakers in support, I will now open to those in opposition.
That's correct.
Okay. So if we could put 5 minutes for those in opposition. And I will welcome any speakers in opposition to item 6B. Seeing no speakers in opposition, I will now close the hearing and return to the commission for comment and action. Commissioner Biddle.
For the sake of time, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent or non-consent public hearing 6B.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Coleman. Commissioners, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with Chair Bashir Tosh and Commissioners Kaur and Neal absent.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 7, reports.
Yes, thank you. As I was preparing this slideshow for the Housing Element Annual Progress Report, Mr. Boyle came into my office, flipped a coin, I won. Next thing you know, we're playing best out of 3, best out of 5, best out of 7 until he won and gets to present. So lucky him. My only hope is that he can retire in the next year, so next year I can present the APR. Mr. Boyle.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. Mr. Boyle.
Well, thank you, Director Johnson. I know the check will clear. It's like the 4th time I've been able to bring an annual housing element report, and I've liked this first screen from the very first time I saw it. It's courtesy of Ms. Cecilia Griego, now with the Economic and Community Development Department. So this is a bit of an abbreviated annual housing progress report, in no small sum because of how the numbers have been impacted by recent histories, and we'll talk about that a little. But we'll look at the 5th cycle conclusions. The 5th cycle is essentially ended, and we'll kick off the 6th cycle and look at progress there, and then we'll look at some housing project updates. First, the 2023 annual results. Last year, we produced a total of 1,577 residential units. Of that, 258 were low. That was about 17%. We had affordability within 17% of our overall housing mix, with 83% being above market. Now, in my research for this presentation, I found that within HCD's directions as related to the sixth cycle, there was an opportunity to roll the last 6 months of 2023 from July 1 essentially to December 31st in a one-time, and you can only use it one time, into the sixth cycle. And I think this is largely in a way a bonus in terms of pipeline projects. So if you had pipeline projects that got through before the housing element kicked in on January 1, you could still count those units. And the city in good prudence has decided to move those into the last 6 months into our sixth cycle. The instructions are really kind of vague in terms of whether I can use them all within the fifth cycle and then take the second half of 2023 and put it into the sixth cycle. So for this purpose, I'm using half of those numbers from 2012, the numbers from the second half of the year, from July 1 to December 31st. I've cycled those out of our overall numbers for 2023 for the sake of the fifth cycle totals, noting that I did show that there's our overall annual progress, the 1577. So if we looked at our fifth cycle totals with that in mind, you'll see that we produced 792 low-income units over an 8-year span, and that was only 5.1% of our total goal of 9,146. Note that your new goal will be to produce 11,000 plus units of very low-income units in the next 8 years. Very low units were produced at a rate of 232 for the period, and that was a shortfall as well. In terms of market rate units, we did pretty good. We produced 76% of our goal for a total of 16,561 total housing units, or 45.9% of the fifth cycle goal. You look at the overall totals, 5.8 for very low, 4% for low, so on and so forth. We look at, say, a comparative as to production versus our goals. We needed to average 1,592 units per year for market rate, and we averaged 1,342 units. That speaks to our need to even produce more market rate units. Our total housing production averaged 2,070 units a year, noting we had a great year in 2021, I believe, where we produced over 2,500 units total for the year, and we're the #1 producer of housing in the state. I believe we can do that every year, year in and year out. So, but we averaged 22,070 for 45.6% of our target. We needed to average 4,537 units annually over the fifth cycle term. The sixth cycle has just begun. I noted I shifted the last 6 months of 2023 into that sixth cycle. I'm allowed to do so. So I've produced a total of 820 units with 653 market rate and 167 low-income units. Note, there's that 11,129 units that are required to be produced in the next 8 years for very low income. That's 76% of an 8,100 square mile county in 151 square miles. We will do that. I challenge my development community to bring that housing into this community. For low income, we're challenged to build. Well, we can take 167 off the list. We're left with 6,915. Medium or moderate, 5,317 units, and above moderate, 13,933 units, of which we have a head start of 653 units. I note too that we identified about 3,700 units that were in process of various stages. and those have been credited to us, and those can help us get across the finish line in terms of our arena. Let's look at some completed projects. And I would note that there's not a lot of units this year, and you saw a slowdown of units last year, and that's really a byproduct of COVID. Affordable housing doesn't just come out of the ground in a year. It takes a good 3 to 4 years to assemble all the varying funding sources and then compete for some of the city's gap financing through our Affordable Housing Trust Fund to ultimately assemble all the buckets of money necessary to build it. And when you go through a period where everybody shelters in place, those types of activities are suspended, and so consequently, you're seeing that now, that lag coming into the market right now. But nonetheless, we do have some projects that have been completed. Sagewood Apartments, 72 units, including farm-related housing at Berkshire and Stein. That was a grand opening a couple months ago, and just last week or the start of this week, time bleeds together in the Development Services Department. There were 40 units of 6th Street Apartments, 40 units of one-bedrooms that went through grand opening. I was not able to attend the grand opening, but I would have liked to. Under construction right now is the Renaissance at Baker. That's 84 units of affordable housing, and CityServe project is nearing completion, which provides for 127 units of affordable housing. These units here, we will be able to count in our first full year of our vacant sites inventory. So we're excited about at least having some of these units coming to bear. But at the same time, we're anxious to see more of these these projects to be stood up and pushed across the finish line by our Economic and Community Development Department. That completes my abbreviated annual progress report for calendar year 2023. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Is this the newest R6 zone right here? Just kidding.
No, that's Grounded and Boundless, stolen from their website.
Oh,
okay.
Got it. Hashtag Rise24. Any requests to speak? Let's see. Commissioner Strickland.
Just the shifting numbers from the final 6 months of the previous arena to the next 6 months, does that deficit from the 5th cycle and add to the 6th cycle, or is it double counted?
Not necessarily. What you've seen in the 8 years of the 5th cycle is a real shift in housing policy and housing law, where, and I don't know how to put it any other way, there just wasn't a lot of accountability within the requirements that came out of a housing element in 2015. Hence, the city added virtually every vacant site because, whether they were built or weren't built didn't really matter. So today, 8 years later, there's extensive laws on the books in California that provide for accountability as it relates to your housing element, your goals and policies and programs within your housing element and delivery of those things, as well as satisfaction of your vacant sites inventory. And so it's a very different climate today, one where you can be significantly penalized by HCD for failure to bring about this development. So we take the vacant sites inventory and all of the housing element for that matter very seriously.
I guess specifically, the young lady who was here earlier, I'm not going to mess her name up, but she was speaking towards the 5th cycle's lack of low and very low compared to moderate. In the numbers they're looking at, that 5% of the target goal, is that 5% after we've taken a portion of that and moved it to this cycle? Or is that, how does that 500 and something that you just showed, if you could go back a couple slides.
Sure.
You showed the 6 month shift of the last 6 months of 2023 that go into this cycle.
There's the last 6 months of 2023.
Right, and I think you were saying
that's the production during those 6 months.
What's the carryover you were speaking on a couple slides before?
So originally,
yep,
originally we did 1,577 units. Now, some of those occurred in the first 6 months of 2023. Those are accounted for right there in year 9, the 757 units. I wanted just to lie and take at least one number off or add one number to 666, but there it is. But that's the last section of the 5th cycle. Now, but by the same token, within our annual report, we reported the full year's numbers to HCD, okay? But when I look at starting to report next year, and that's the first full year of the 6th cycle, I took advantage of the opportunity to shift the last 6 months. And that's a one-time shot because I'm aiming to win.
Okay, but
Okay.
it shifts to this cycle, so it's accounted for this year, right? Or this 6th element.
That's the mystery of the instructions from HCD. I'm erring on the side of caution. For all I know, it says you can only do it one time. So does that mean I can count the whole year for the end of the 5th cycle, and I can only one time take the last 6 months and move it? I'm not sure. I looked for clarification within their multi-page document and could not find that. So ultimately, I provided you 2 variables. One where all of 2023's development is incorporated into our annual progress report, which Mr. Ramirez completed, and then moving forward into the 6th cycle, their instructions allow us to move the last 6 months into that 6th cycle. So I took advantage of their graciousness. Most of the time, HCD has a stick. This time, it's a carrot.
Right. Got it. That was it. Thank you.
Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Cater. I'll keep my comments short, or comments short. First of all, Mr. Boyle, thank you very much for your presentation. You've always done an excellent job of explaining this to where the common person can understand it. So thank you very much for your hard work on it. I'm looking at the CityServe project specifically, and I had an opportunity to go over there and meet with the builder and tour the project during construction, and they're going to be wrapping up here sometime mid-year probably. But then it was, I put some nice thing about it on my Facebook, and I got bombarded with the naysayers that, oh, it's $232,000 a unit to build. And, my point was that it's transitional housing. So it's not just that, they're going to be able to accommodate 127 people. They're going to be able to accommodate 127 people. And it's going to turn over, into perpetuity. So we're going to be thousands of people. So the question really is, can we count it more than once if it's transitional housing? Is there some metric to because it is used over and over for more people coming off the streets or whatever, going into more permanent housing? There's some metric that allows us to somehow treat that better than other things.
The short answer is absolutely. That project is developed through HCD funding through their Home Key program, and that'll be deed restricted low and very low income housing. And we thank the state for their gracious grant to CityServe to provide for those additional units.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I have no further questions.
No, thank you for your comments. Mr. Boyle, thank you for your presentation. I have to admit, it was weird to hear your presentation during a public hearing. I'm not used to that, so I apologize if the rebuttal was a little bit awkward, 'cause I'm used to the comment and file. I did have a question. Something that about the RENA numbers that have been just on my mind a lot is unincorporated Kern has a very low threshold relative to the city of Bakersfield. But am I correct in that the unincorporated parts of Kern County that are adjacent to Bakersfield fall into that category and not Metro Bakersfield?
All of the unincorporated areas of Kern County, including those unincorporated areas within our sphere, are part of the available lands for the County of Kern to address their vacant sites inventory. Yes.
And there's no acknowledgement of a weird, like, given rural numbers, but being more or less its population base fused to ours. It just seems like it was something that maybe seems like an oversimplification of a metro area versus very strange boundary lines.
First, I would state that I want to be a good partner with the county.
Yep.
The county's RENA had been something in the neighborhood of 22,000, and there's a 57% reduction into their less than 10,000 number. To be honest, it's frustrating when the area that the city must build into has vacant sites inventory that's dedicated to satisfying the county's RENA. It's difficult now. It potentially more difficult in the future as those parcels are built out and the city must build either through or around them. But that's a problem for every municipality and every sphere of influence in the state of California. And I don't know how to solve it. I'd love to see the Kern County and the city come together and devise strategies where the city would have better opportunities to protect its sphere for its future development, noting the amount of development that the state challenges us to produce. And I think within our general plan goals and policies in our land use element, we'll speak to those types of goals within a section that addresses annexations and our sphere of influence. It'd be even more productive if the county came to the table and we did that collaboratively as opposed to unilaterally.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that a little bit. Yeah, I appreciate your presentation. There are no additional commissioner speakers. I closed that tab on accident. So I will just
receive and file?
Receive and file.
Thank you.
Unless we can do it without quorum?
We don't need a vote.
Oh, good.
Just receive and
Okay.
file.
Well, then gladly receive and file, and thank you for the update. Next, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 8, communications.
Are there any?
I appreciate the commissioners for this special meeting. There was a few things we needed to get done, so thank you very much. And also thank you for my staff for all the support on this special meeting. Next week, we will be at the Planning Commissioners Academy. If you have any questions or issues, I believe you all have my cell phone. You can contact me. Other than that, we will see you next Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Madam Clerk, next item, please. Oh, yes, next item, please. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 9, commission comments.
Are there any commissioner comments? Commissioner Coleman.
This is for the city attorney. Can you clarify, this is the first time we've ever had a quorum problem, because usually everybody shows up. The way I've handled this in other places is that you only need a quorum to start the meeting. Is that the same for this meeting, or does the quorum need to stay through the entire?
So Commissioner Coleman, we do need the quorum to vote on all items. But because this was only a receive and file and it wasn't an action item, we're okay to not actually vote on the receive and file.
So then the quorum needs to stay as long as we have actionable
items.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for
Yes,
clarifying
of course.
that for me.
And thank you for the question. Commissioner Strickland.
I had two quick comments, promise. One, I wanted to thank Commissioner Coman for helping navigate the agenda item 6A and crafting that. I learned a lot off of that, so thank you. And then the other comment I wanted to make is maybe a recommendation that we get recycling cans in here. Is that who can I make that request to?
I'll take that request.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay, as long as it doesn't pain you. I know recycling is not. Got it. Thank you. That's it.
I enthusiastically agree. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Agenda item 10, adjournment.
This meeting is adjourned at 9:11. Have a great evening.